Well, this is where we give you a full view of the election results. A very good evening to you. I'm Criselda Lewis. In the first hour of the show, we'll be crossing to all of our reporters countrywide for the latest updates. Yavi and Shante will also give us all the trends on social media. But first, Stephen Huertas is live from the Results Centre in Pretoria. A very good evening to you, Stephen.
Criselda, good evening to you. Thank you very much indeed. All right, this is what's happening behind me here. I'm on the floor of the headquarters, the Results Operations Centre of the Electoral Commission. Behind me, you can see the figure of Mzwanele Mani and others, people from the Black First, Land First movement and the African Transformation movement. They led a small, protest here, a group of people singing and dancing as they came in. They were singing that the IEC doesn't recognize us. And Mzwanele Mani has been suggesting in the last few minutes that they're going to make objections to the outcome of the elections, suggesting that the IEC is guilty of malpractice in this case and that the results of the election and the election itself will not be free and fair. Let's just cross there. Let's cross now to the ATM and hear what they're saying for themselves.
And smaller parties, and in this case, you are seeing the results. It does not make sense. Some of the results that are coming out of here are very questionable because of the population demographics do not even support those results. So we are here to declare that these elections were not free, nor were they fair. Yes. We were not afforded that opportunity.
Okay.
Mandela!
Yeah. What we're saying as a combination of the political party, once we're starting to campaign, there is no big party. All of us were equally.
Switch the mic on.
So all the parties are equal. But the way we are treated, this election is not free and fair because the SABC radio and television, they didn't give us even the opportunity to advertise ourselves in the TV and radio. They're sidelining us. Before the result, there is no big party. And then the issue of the ink is very, very important. So we say this election is not free and fair. We must re-elect.
Rerun. We are rejecting it.
We would like to say as Mandela, we would like to say as the Black First, Land First that over and above the overwhelming evidence that there has been irregularities governing these elections, there is a clear political program to lead for a government of national unity between political parties linked to the agenda of white monopoly capital. And these political parties are the ANC, is the DA, and is the Economic Freedom Fighters. We are seeing here a ridicule of parties aligned to an agenda of radical economic transformation, of parties who have fashioned themselves to have confronted white monopoly capital. The results that we see on this board makes a total ridicule of all the work that we have done as so-called smaller parties, as you have chosen to describe us. So we are very dissatisfied with the irregularities, but there is a political program to alienate dissenting voice who speak against the status quo in this country.
Thank you.
We reject this election. We reject the process. We think the IEC has lost the control of these processes completely. The credibility of this election process is totally questionable as we speak. As the SRWP, we believe that the results that are going to be showed here are not credible results. As we speak now, there are so many ballot boxes that are being found on the streets, on the field, with the ballot papers. Some are cast, some are not. That is a clear indication that the IEC has lost the control of the election process completely.
Okay, Forum for Service Delivery. We as Forum for Service Delivery, we are of the view that these elections are not free and fair. We have raised the issue of IEC head, Clan Mashinini, taking a walk with another voter called Cyril Ramaphosa to go and vote. We are saying why he chose one voter, why not all the voters? And again, in Northwest, people were given 3 ballots. 2 national, 1 province, or vice versa. So we are rejecting these elections, and we are not happy, and we are prepared to go as far as electoral court and even constitutional court. Thank you.
Yeah, the lady.
My name is Nelly Tom. I'm from the Alliance for Transformation for All. I agree what other comrades said. I voted yesterday in Cape Town, Ward 98. The scan, I voted without my ID being scanned. And most people that work for IEC are teachers. And they are not technologically professional. Because they're supposed to start at 7 o'clock. We started past 8. Up until I have to say I'm going to call the journalist. Then it's where they let me vote it without being my ID scan. Then I have to take the flight here. So we are not really happy. Some station in Makaza, they run out of ballot boxes, and whereby the presiding officers, they treated the smaller parties very badly. We are not 100% happy with the results. And for next time, IEC have to employ the young children that has been graduated for economic development in this country. The teachers have salaries, but at the end of the day, they are working for IEC, and they don't know exactly what they are doing. Because when I speak to the deputy presiding on that station, she said, I can rather go. Some people were going to work, they left the station. So most of our votes are not accountable. Thank you.
Okay. As National Freedom Party, we wish to concur. Okay. We as National Freedom Party, we agree with all the small parties, and we are also not happy about you, members of media houses, the way you are treating us. You are only here for ANC, PA, and EFF. That is the only parties you want to cover. You have been doing this while we are campaigning, during our campaign, and even now, when we are requesting you to cover us, you only tell us you cover the big brothers. This is South Africa. It's a democratic country. We don't care about those big brothers. And we want to challenge them even in the court of law. Thank you.
Are you going to court?
Yes.
We'll take questions just now. All right. Over to you. We as the Land Party, we are saying the IEC and the SABC, they're taking the media, they're taking us for granted. And we cannot allow the kind of nonsense that they're putting to us as the smaller parties. And we are saying these elections were not free and fair. So we are going to court and contest this, because only the three biggest political parties were given media attention, and we were not even considered. I can tell you that even yesterday, they were moving around here in front of us, but they did not even look at us. We looked like some cheap stuff here, and we paid the equal amount of registration. So we are saying, if this thing, they don't stop with this thing, we are going to challenge them in court. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. We, as the African Content Movement, we are saying to the IEC, we have seen that it is very corrupt itself. And the reason we have called this particular media briefing is because we've been continually talking to the IEC, and we told the CEO to say to him that, as Mr. CEO, we've been raising our issues and we've been raising our queries, they are not being attended. And those who have voted for us, they are also questioning these nonsensical results that we are seeing here on this platform. So we are saying, as the ACM, those days are over for the IEC to favor certain party because they are employed by them. We are saying now there is no small party here. These are parties that represent South Africans. And as we told the CEO of the IEC without fear, we told him that we are going together as parties. We want to be respected because we represent people. We are not going to actually come here to just push an agenda of the IEC and the ANC where we are being made to accept results that have got a lot of irregularities. So we have told them that people have been given 3-4 ballots. Ballots have been finished. We've got now people who are arrested. We've got South Africans who were arrested because of the negligence of the same IEC. They told us that we must cite the codes of conduct. Mara, we are questioning them to say that what kind of code of conduct are we signing when yourself you don't treat the elections to be free and fair? Now we've got the results. These results, we can tell you, they are set up. We don't agree with the results. Our people don't agree with the results. We have worked very hard. Like, for example, the African Content Movement had more than 5,000 party agents in the stations. But how come, because our party agents, all of them voted, we've got this kind of results? So what we are saying as the parties were united, and we are saying those days of these so-called big parties undermining democracy that they practice to be preaching are over. So we are saying that the IEC, we are going to make sure that we hold you accountable without fear and favor. Thank you very much.
The last speaker.
Eco Forum.
Thank you. I'm Basali Dwaba from Women's Forward. Our concern is the way the IEC is doing its things here. We don't know why we are still here. We don't know where are these results being put on the board, because IEC itself, from all the meetings that has been attended, has been agreeing with us that there are a lot of irregularities. So why are the results here? Where does the results come from? We don't know. The IEC should stop what it's doing and go back and redo what we must go back and re-elect the people. They can't go and arrest people for irregularities and continue giving us the results. This is wrong, and the IEC is wrong.
Okay, what we'll do, we'll take a couple of questions. All right, just introduce yourself.
All right, well, good evening. Behind me, you see a group of small parties, representatives of some of the smaller parties and the parties towards the bottom end of the results in this election. They've been holding a protest here and a press conference. They're going to take questions now. They've said that they believe that the outcome of this election and the election itself is not free and fair. Some of the parties involved include the African Transformation Movement, Black First, Land First Movement, and some of the others. One of the people involved in this is Adil Chabaleng, a spokesperson for the African People's Convention. What is your problem with the Electoral Commission? What do you believe they've done wrong here?
When we had a meeting earlier as a group of smaller parties that have contested elections, and out of that meeting a lot of irregularities were cited and were actually highlighted as to what went wrong with these particular elections. One particular issue is on the day of elections, IEC was not in control. There were many irregularities. One of the key 4 irregularities was the issue of the ink, people having multiple votes, the issue of issuing out of the voting slips, the issue of scanners not working properly, the VC form 4s which were not available at stations, aspects which relates to the overall operation of the stations. People were allowed to come in and go. People were allowed to interrogate. Some of the people who were on the floor on the particular stations were actually party people who were working for IEC. That is irregular on its own.
Okay, I'm sorry, but you say all of that. There isn't actually evidence of that. I mean, there are 1 or 2 accounts on Twitter. We've had the whole conversation about whether people can vote twice. But in terms of what you're alleging, which would mean some kind of widespread problem. I mean, for example, where are party agents helping the IEC? There was one case. The deputy presiding officer in that case was fired, didn't actually preside over the elections. Where's the evidence you need of what you say is a widespread claim?
This is a decision taken by a collective body. If you are looking for evidence, as usual in South Africa, whenever we have grievances, we are not taken serious. We are told that we don't present any evidence when there is clear and irregular processes, which IEC itself, by the way, has agreed to some of those irregular processes. So the other aspect of it is, as smaller parties, we were never covered anywhere. Television in terms of SABC, the radio aspect of it, television aspect of it, all license holders of television in South Africa refused to cover all the smaller parties. They were only interested in 3 parties. Why was there no evidence provided when we were raising some of those issues?
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, Mr. Chabaleng, but you haven't answered my question. Where's the evidence?
I'm not here. I'm telling you what the position of the group is. The position of the group is they are disputing the results. They say it was not free and fair. They were not given the opportunities. They were not provided. This is a story we want to tell to the world, to say our story matters the most. We have a right. We brought people to ballot boxes, to voting stations. They were not treated properly. And on top of it, we came with busloads of people. People were voting from one station to another. Why would you dispute that fact when you saw evidence of it?
Okay, if you total all of the parties together, we're looking at what, 6 or 7, maybe 8 political parties who are working together in this case?
The whole full room was full of party members there, of representatives.
I'm sorry.
Don't undermine the cause that we
Okay, how many parties?
Over 30
Mr. Nchabaleng,
smaller parties that are contesting these elections, which needs to be given an opportunity.
Mr. Nchabaleng, I'm sorry, sir. You can decide to answer my questions or you can harangue. It's up to you. Here's the point. If you put all of the votes that these parties have got together. We're looking at probably 150,000 votes, and I'm afraid, sir, while I haven't done the calculations with a calculator, I'm probably being generous. We know that just the three major parties together are sitting on about 7 million votes.
Yes.
It would have to be a conspiracy. If I may finish my question, sir.
What does it tell you? There has been irregularities. People have been doing...
Irregularities, 7 million versus 100,000 votes.
People have been going in for multiple votes. There's been ballot boxes that have been tampered with. Why don't you decide that there's a particular issue?
Every ballot box would have to be tampered with.
You're telling us that you are in an agreement with the election outcomes that says that currently majority has agreed with the outcome, when we know that the ANC has actually lost significant losses in the election. Most of these parties are mostly coming from some of these particular movements. So I don't understand why journalists in South Africa, particularly in this country, continue to undermine the existence of smaller parties. And we have to be told that we don't have a voice to actually issue out irregularity. This is our own protest. We are saying we have resolved that there is an irregularity about the elections. And we must be given an opportunity to state our case. We do not need to be providing you anything right now. We are telling you our position, and this is what we've said. The world must hear. The observers who are here must come and inquire from individual parties and ask what is the issues, why are these parties standing here today, having to risk everything in their lives.
Thank you very much indeed. Adele in Chabaleng, I'm sure that we'll discuss this again in the future. All right, I would like, if I could ask you just to make way for another member of your collective from the Black First, Land First movement. Ma'am, good evening to you. I'm afraid I don't know your surname, but I know your first name is Zanele.
No problem.
What is your surname, sir?
Luana.
Luana. All right, I'm sorry about that. It is one of those moments that we're doing this as we go. Zanele, can I just ask you, and I do want to put the same question I put to Mr. Chabaleng a few moments ago. I mean, your party got under 8,000 votes in this election, of the votes that are counted. There'll still be more votes to come for you in this election. But what claim are you then making against the IEC if you got so few votes compared to the other parties that got so many?
There are two main concerns. One way of looking at it is the procedure in terms of looking at all the irregularities that have been cited by many other political parties that puts the integrity of the Independent Electoral Commission into question. We then say, as Black First Land First, over and above these irregularities that compromise the fairness of these elections is a political program. We believe that in South Africa, there has been a decision to move towards a coalition government led particularly by the ANC, the EFF, and the DA. And it seems that in order for this to be made possible, parties who are pro-black, parties who represent a different agenda, parties who are not in the pockets of white monopoly capital are being cut out so that they do not get the sufficient representation in parliament so that they may be able to present a different alternative to the people of South Africa.
Well, the EFF, which presents a relatively similar thing, I mean, they're the ones who made the land issue such a big issue on the agenda. They've got 812,000 votes at the moment. Do you really think that there's a conspiracy against you and that the EFF is not pro-black?
There is definitely a conspiracy against pro-black political parties who stand for radical economic transformation. The establishment knows particularly that a party such as Black First Land First will not give a white party such as the DA black votes. And that is why we believe as Black First Land First, a party such as ours is being strategically being alienated into the side so that our voice can be silenced, so that our voice can be delegitimized, using the power to rig elections and create an environment where everyone agrees with each other, and that is not to question the establishment and white monopoly capital.
Nella Luanda, nice to meet you. Thank you very much indeed for your time. I do appreciate it. So that's the situation we have here at the moment. Now we have various analysts, various people will be speaking to this. We'll speak to Angelo Fick and Professor Susan Boyson in a moment as well, and we'll speak to them about these particular developments. We'll get their views on that. Musime Mani, the leader of the Democratic Alliance, has just arrived. We'll walk over there now, and we are expecting him to speak as well, and we are expecting him to actually be able to speak and give his view on the elections, and we'll just go towards him to see what is happening there. In fact, you'll be able to see if we're able to get him. He's going to come over here and do a speech, I understand. We are expecting him to take questions as well, but he's going to speak first. So we'll move there and see if we're able to actually hear from the leader of the Democratic Alliance, Musime Mani, who is speaking here. All right, so he's about to speak. Here we go.
Oh, hello everybody, and I'm so glad to come to the IEC Results Center. I'm here with the chairperson of the DA, Ethel Trollip, And we, from a party political point of view, I've just looked at the initial projections. We're very happy that we'll retain the Western Cape. We're very clear about the fact that Gauteng is still on a knife edge, which is part of the work that we've done. And I'm most grateful for the fact that we've built an organization that works for all South Africans. So for us, it's been a very important election. It's been one that's been defining. And so we just came here. Of course, we got concerns about the electoral process in how some of the issues have been handled. I'm concerned that many South Africans were able to vote twice, and therefore our call for an audit is still an important one, because we think that needs to be interrogated. But I'm most comfortable about the fact. So I thought I'll just come and find out and say congratulations first up to Team Western Cape, who are going to retain that and grow in this election. So we're very excited about that.
Mr. Memani, Stephen Critters from the SABC. Isn't the situation actually that surely it doesn't look like you're going to substantially or significantly increase your share of the national vote? It looks like you're going to stay roughly the same.
No, look, what I think is important to note is the fact that when I set out as leader of the DA, I went out to say we want to build one South Africa for all, we want to build a party that works for all South Africans. And I think many of them have come through in a very complicated election, if you look at how it's worked out. And we're comfortable. We're building a diverse organization. Black South Africans have come to vote for the DA. White South Africans have voted for the DA. So I'm quite content with where we are at the moment as a party. We've built a very strong foundation. And especially young voters have come out, and the support for the DA has been very strong. So I'm quite comfortable with where it's at.
On the current trends, you're actually going to get fewer votes in Gauteng in this election than you did in 2014.
Look, I mean, the Gauteng election is still not finalized yet. I'm looking at the projections and see how we're going to go. We're comfortable with where we govern. We ran a very strong campaign here. So I'm looking forward to the final results when they come out. I'll be back here tomorrow as soon as I get more VDs coming in from Gauteng to get an understanding as to what happened in Joburg and all of that. But from our current indicators, one of the things that are always important for me to look out for is that when we went out to campaign to want to build one South Africa for all, I wanted to monitor to make sure that black South Africans, white South Africans, Indian South Africans, colored South Africans came out to vote. And I think we've been able to achieve that. We're the only party that is representative of that in an election where in many ways there's been a contestation of different types of nationalism that have occurred. So we're very comfortable that we can offer that vision to all South Africans.
You have seen the smaller parties. They've made a call for the elections to be rerun. You support an audit, you've just said. You're not supporting a rerun at this stage?
Not at this stage. We've got to get an audit so that we know the extent and the question about how material the issues of ink not working properly, how when people came to cast their votes, actually they could vote twice. So let that audit take place, because ultimately it's in the interest of every party, whether small or big, that you want to make sure that the elections were free and fair, which is crucial. So we'll be monitoring that particular situation.
Mr. Memani Katleho from Kaya FM. I just wanted to find out from you, in terms of, looking at the results so far in Gauteng, the DA is not doing that great compared to the ANC. Are you willing to go into a coalition, or is this something that is on the cards if the DA doesn't do well in this province?
No, look, as you know, we set some very important objectives, and here in Gauteng, it's been a big election, it's been a tough election, but I'm comfortable. We're waiting for, as I said earlier on, I'm waiting for the results. The question about coalitions is never with who, it's about what. What do you want to do? Do you want to bring an agenda for change? Do you want to ensure that you put a job in every home? That's always been our mantra, and we'll continue to fight that. And so I'm just waiting for the preliminary results. Let's not talk coalitions yet. Let's figure out what's going to happen with the results.
Mr. Memani from Sunday Times.
That's the leader of the Democratic Alliance, Musi Memani, taking questions from journalists today. And actually that happening here live at the moment. We are going to get some analysis of the events that have just happened, as you heard a little while ago there. The smaller parties also saying that they are actually going to challenge the outcome of this election. They say that it was not free and fair. And we have the leader of the DA, Musi Memani, saying and talking up the way the performance of the Democratic Alliance. Professor Susan Boyson from Wits University, a political analyst. Let's just start with the call from these smaller parties. They want the elections to be rerun. I do need to go and check with a calculator and a computer and someone who understands maths, but I think altogether they're probably lucky to get 150,000 votes of the almost 10 million counted so far. Yes. Your thoughts?
I see it as really, unfortunately, the time when the parties, small parties, almost million parties, realize they are not going to get anywhere, realize the 200,000 national deposits, 45,000 provincially, are all going down the drain very very fast, and they see problems, and I think they are opportunistic in that way because they are definitely elevating instances, small occurrences, at most sometimes a few occurrences, things that are under control. They're using that to project as if the IEC was out of control. And I think that is really opportunistic. One has sympathy with these small parties, but so many of them had really not even been political parties before. If they had been establishing track records, been building up, mobilizing the way conventional political parties do, the chances are they would not have been in this invidious situation.
In a way, it's also interesting. I mean, some of them all have links in various people or sort of claims. I mean, the ATM, there's been a claim that people in the ANC were involved in starting it. Mzwanele Money, Black First, Land First got its seed capital, if I can use that phrase, from Bell Pottinger, although Andile Mkritama denied that again this morning, although there's plenty of evidence that that is the case. The Transformation RSA organization, which involves Adil and Andile Nchabaleng, all of these people have some sort of links in some way to politics that's happened before.
Yes, indeed. And we see also that they would probably in a different space and time not have been political parties, but then they've seen what I call the AIC, African Independent Congress model. It'll be interesting to see whether they are part of the show as well, where the parties see disproportionate power, a few, maybe even name confusion with the ANC, but a few seats strategically, and they've got disproportionate power. And I think that has really bolstered and encouraged many, many new parties. So many other names on the list here. The acronyms on the list here are almost unrecognizable, at least in terms of any preceding activity.
President Susan Boyson from Wits University, thank you very much indeed. Let's introduce the spokesperson for COPE, Dennis Blum. Good to see you, sir. We've had various developments today.
Yes.
Are you supporting the small parties who are making these claims?
We are supporting them wholeheartedly. We are joining into this. We are sick and tired that people must rig an election. We cannot allow a situation. This is not a banana republic. And we will never allow that this country must turn into a banana republic. We will approach the courts of this country. But this election, we can never, ever, and we are not supporting this election, because you can see that it is a rigged thing that nobody will ever accept. We will go to the courts of law and we will challenge it. It is unacceptable that people must do this thing. We are not going. The Congress of the People are joining all these parties because they are fighting for the right thing. We are not accepting it.
You say you're going to court. What evidence will you produce? And that evidence can't just be Twitter.
There's evidence of people who have voted twice. Ballot papers that got missing. We will produce evidence. We are having people that we are going to use to testify in court, but we are not going to accept this. I mean, this is a democracy. It's not a republic, a banana republic. We are not going to accept it.
Dennis Blum from Congress of the People, thank you very much indeed. Let's get some more analysis now. Angelo Fick, the director of the Our Socioeconomic Research Institute. You've seen him many times here. Angelo, thanks very much indeed. All right, let's just talk about the Electoral Commission. How does it respond to this? It is, in a sense, now going to have to mount some kind of response to this claim from the smaller parties.
So the question that one has for the smaller parties is whether they've taken this complaint to the Electoral Commission, and, you know, people say they have evidence and that they say they will present it at some point. The question is they should be presenting it to the IEC and to the Electoral Court as we speak. So if the evidence exists, it is absolutely essential that in a constitutional democracy, people who take themselves seriously as political figures should present that evidence to those institutions that they say they're going to approach. This idea that it will be presented at some future point is actually unacceptable. If the evidence exists, people need to provide them to the authorities that are mandated by these institutions that they say they trust to handle this. And so the IEC's, I think, response is to wait until these parties approach the courts and then have a response.
Angelo Fick, thanks very much indeed. We'll have more discussions about this. We are expecting some of the ANC leaders to come through here, including their national chair, in the next little while. So we are going to have a look at that as well and just see what's happening. All right, we understand that the economic freedom fighters leaders are now coming through, and I expect perhaps that their commander-in-chief, Julius Malema, will be among them, and we are going to talk to them about, we are going to talk to the people, we are going to talk to the people about that. And in fact, one of the people who joins me now is Peter. So are we expecting your leaders to come through now?
Well, we don't know what was happening here. Perhaps maybe we are missing something, because there was a meeting earlier on where these issues were raised, and the IEC have committed that they are going to conduct a sample of audit, and the parties agreed there. So we are not. So we are just waiting for the votes to come in, and we'll take it from there.
All right. Are you expecting your leadership to come through here in a little while?
Yeah, we are expecting the leadership. They should be here anytime from now, so that they will give a proper and thorough clarity in terms of what needs to happen from here.
And in this situation, then, I mean, what are you expecting that the rest of the counting is going to go smoothly?
The counting is going smoothly as far as we are concerned, and as you can see, numbers are coming in. We will accept those minor discrepancies that were raised, but so far the counting has been going well.
So thank you very much for your time on the SABC. I'm just going to ask Anele, Tom, I saw you speaking there earlier. You're from the Alliance for Transformation for All, one of the people who is protesting against the Electoral Commission and the way that this has been handled. Ma'am, obviously in a way this has to go to court at some point or go through the constitutional processes. Those could include the Electoral Court or formal complaints to the Electoral Commission. Have you started that process?
We just about to start that. We're going to have another meeting soon. Then we compile, we decide all the parties that had complaints, because this is not fair elections, because most of our party agents were not treated, and most of the presiding officers were not professional enough because they started late, and you cannot be not sure in front of your client, because we are IEC, because we affiliated the same money that the ANC pays, and at the end of the day, they're not sure of what they are doing.
Okay, but I mean, I do have to bring this up. The number of votes that your parties altogether have got compared to the other parties, I mean, the difference is huge.
Yes, the difference is huge, because this is a new brainchild. We registered last year, September, and December was holiday. No one was doing that. Then we had 3 months. For us, we are not discouraged. This is just the beginning, so that the government can know that, can recognize, because this is a brainchild from the taxi industry and the second economy in the world, in South Africa, that is not being recognized by the government. We don't want to voice it. We just want to voice out our problems.
Anele, Tom, thank you very much indeed. We'll leave it there. I can see that you're needed. All right, we're going to go back to Joburg for the next little while. Let's take a look at some of the numbers on the board. And you can see the numbers of the votes there. The ANC, 4,945,622. You can see the Democratic Alliance further down that board, 1,963,471. And the Economic Freedom Fighters, 843,372. Let's look for the Inkatha Freedom Party. They're right at the top of the second column, 221,780 votes. And then the Freedom Front Plus, in a way, the story of this election to an extent, because of the increase in their support so far, 230,163. The Good Party, Patricia de Lille's Good Party, I saw her earlier. She was in good humor, 50,034 votes. And then the ATM as well, the African Transformation Movement, they sort of bringing up the last of the top 5 or 6 parties, if you understand what I mean when I say that. And you can see that the ATM, 42,169. That's about 0.5%. So they might, at this stage, on the current predictions, get around 2 seats in Parliament. That's the situation here at the Results Operations Centre. Griselda, back to you in Auckland Park.
Well, thank you very much to Stephen Huertas there live from the Rock Centre, of course, in Pretoria, where some smaller parties are, of course, calling for a rerun of the election, saying the process was not fair. We see a lot of people are also commenting on that on social media. We'll chat to Yavi and Shante a little bit later on what people have to say on social media. But let's cross now to our reporters live. Let's start with reporter Asanda Beja, who joins us from the IEC Centre in East London with the latest numbers. A very good evening to you, Asanda. What's the latest there?
Good evening, Criselda, and welcome to the Results Centre right here at East London in the Eastern Cape. Well, capturing of results in the Eastern Cape is now sitting at just over 83%. The majority of the municipalities that have been counted, though, is the smaller municipalities. So we're still waiting on the bigger municipalities and the two metros in the province. But so far, the ANC has retained its majority. If you look at the results currently, the ANC is sitting at 69%. It's a slight drop currently compared to the previous election where it was at just over 70%. But remember, the results are not final yet. Trailing behind it is the DA at 15%. Now, the DA doesn't seem to be moving much in terms of growth. At the last election, it was at 16%. We'll wait to see what it does when the overall numbers are done, especially from the metros. Coming behind the DA is the EFF. It's at 7%. Now, the EFF seems to be growing. It's an expected growth. It's not all too surprising. If you look at it this year, it's at 7%. In the previous election, it was at 3%. So already a spike, and that's before the numbers are done. Let's have a look at what the metros are showing currently. Remember, as I mentioned earlier, these numbers are not the final numbers. We're still going to get another briefing from the IEC in the province later on what the numbers look like. But currently, at the Nelson Mandela Metro, the ANC is sitting at 46%, the DA is at 39%, and the EFF is sitting at 7%. So there may be a need for a coalition going forward, not just on what is at the metro, but also maybe more, instead of a coalition, but more closer working relations between the parties in that part of the province. At Buffalo City Municipality, where we are right now, the numbers stand at, for the ANC at 68%, with the DA at 14%, and the EFF at 12%. So that's where we are currently. They're still finalizing numbers. There were some delays in the western part of the province around the Nelson Mandela Metro. We're waiting to get final results around there. But for now, the ANC, as expected, has retained its majority in the Eastern Cape. It's sitting comfortably at 69%. We'll hear from the IEC when the overall results of the province will be done later, but it should all be done later in the evening. We will get a briefing from the Chief Electoral Officer, Kayakazi Magudumane, later in the evening. But for now, we will hand you back to Pretoria.
Thank you very much, Asanda Mbecha, covering the Eastern Cape for us there with all the latest results. Reporter Ayanda Mhlongo is next. She's in Durban, still below 50% on vote counting, Ayanda, but of course a lot of focus on the arrests that were made on allegations of double voting.
A very good evening to you, Criselda. Good evening to our viewers. And still coming to you from the Result Operating Centre here in Durban, where behind us the results capturers, the data capturers are still busy capturing, verifying and auditing those results as they come through. We're still, Criselda, below 50% of the results that have been counted. So it's been quite a slow day in terms of the results that have been coming through from the voting stations here in Kwazulu-Natal. But while the results are being captured, there's been a bit of dissatisfaction on the side of some of the political parties here, and that is after, of course, the IEC midday hosting a media briefing detailing information with regards to the election process, saying that confirming the 19 arrests here in the province of KwaZulu-Natal of alleged voters who had double or duplicate votes. That investigation is going ahead. And so there's been a number of issues that have been raised, and we already know that parties like the IFP and the DA have lodged objections with the IEC. There is also the issue of ink, which the IEC says it is going to be investigating, and at least 3 municipalities here in KwaZulu-Natal, and you know that is the ink that is marked the thumb once the voter has voted. There were concerns that many people in those 3 municipalities, the ink wiped out very quickly after they had voted, and so they were concerned that some people may have again tried to vote in different voting stations. So the IEC confirming that it is looking into that. Just a while ago, also receiving that statement and confirmation of a death at one of the voting stations. IFP a member is said to have been killed after an incident relating, according to the party, to the voting process. A brawl that started inside a voting station and spilled over, resulting in an IFP member in the area of Town being killed. Again, there the authorities are investigating the circumstances around that, and at the moment all we can confirm is the death and the statement, and the IFP they're urging those involved to share information with the police and saying that it was an unfortunate incident that has marred the election in that particular area. So a lot of unhappiness, Griselda, from some of the political parties questioning this election process, and really most of them saying to us that, as the IEC has said here in KwaZulu-Natal, that the results will be declared come Saturday, that they feel that the IEC should hold off on that until the auditing or companies have done auditing the results, because from their side they feel that the results or the election has not been free and fair. So a lot more issues coming up that we will be following, Griselda, and of course we'll continue to monitor the results.
Reporter Ayanda Mhlongo monitoring KwaZulu-Natal for us as the results continue to come in. Less than 50% of the votes counted in that particular province. Of course, over 89% of the votes have been counted in the Northern Cape. It seems the ANC is heading for an overwhelming majority in that province. Joining us from Kimberley is our reporter Reginald Witboy. Reginald, give us the latest.
Well, with 90% of the voting districts declared here in the Northern Cape, the ANC is taking the lead with 56%. That is down as we stand compared to 2014, where they stood at 64%. The DA standing at 26%. That's up compared to 2014 when they're at 23%. EFF also at 8%. That's double compared to 2014 when they had 4%. Surprisingly, the Freedom Front Plus have 2% at this stage, and well, 1 seat for them in the Northern Cape legislature. And then I spoke to the IEC's Northern Cape manager, Bonolo Modise, earlier on. He was telling me that 40 voting stations still needs to be captured, and well, counting is done, and all those 40 stations is in the John Taulo Gaitsewe district, which is the biggest district here in the province. And also, if we can just look at Cope, just 1% ahead of the new party, which is good. Cope at 0.89% and good at 0.88%. And then also looking at the Khoisan Party, Khoisan Revolutionary Party, that's making inroads compared to 2014 when that party didn't even appeared on the list. So it will be interesting to see if the ANC will still get that landslide victory that they are hoping for. I spoke to the ANC's provincial leader, Zamani Saul, earlier on, and he was adamant that they will still get that landslide victory. Well, a political analyst, he doesn't agree with that one, and he was basically telling me that the numbers won't change that significantly. But hopefully by 8 o'clock we will be done and the results will be declared here in the Northern Cape, and that's what the IEC hope for at this stage.
Well, Reginald Footboy handling results for us, looking into the results, of course, in Kimberley in the Northern Cape. Thanks for your time, Reginald. Let's go to Polokwane now in Limpopo to speak to our reporter, Musa Mabunda. Musa, very good evening to you. When I spoke to you about 30 minutes ago, you were telling me that of the 3,157 voting stations in the province, the results of more than 1,200 had already been captured. Tell us more.
That's correct, Griselda. Yes, we are coming to you live from the provincial IEC here in Polokwane. Indeed, where we stand now, all the voting stations here in Polokwane, or in the province of Limpopo rather, 3,157 voting stations have now completed counting the votes. What's left now is the capturing of the votes, and as you mentioned there, more than 1,200 stations have captured their result and have sent the result through to this center here in Polokwane. So far, we don't see much change happening with regards to or the voter or the share of votes here in this province. The ANC is standing comfortably at 76%, followed by the EFF. That has been the official opposition in this province. They have slightly increased their vote from 10% to 12%, with the DA sitting or retaining its 6%. However, even though the ANC, as the governing party, is sitting comfortably at more than 70% of the vote, which is a good number, which is more than two-thirds majority, Griselda. Look, we are seeing a slight drop in votes when we compare the performance of the ruling party since 2009, where they got 84%, followed by the 2004 elections, where they stood at 89%. However, they say they're feeling comfortable. They will improve here and there during the next 5 years, and they hope to go back to their high numbers of 84%. And then, if I can just tell you shortly here, in this province, 2.6 million people have registered to vote. We don't know yet the turnout. We're going to have a briefing later this evening, and the PEO, or the Provincial Executive Officer, will give us exactly what is the turnout. If I can just quickly give you the updates with regards to arrests that have happened in this province during the last 3 days of voting, including the special voting days. You remember there was a case of robbery where the men have walked in a voting station at Guwela in the Greater Guyana Municipality, and they took voting materials. 2 people have been arrested. They have been granted 5,000 rand bail, and they'll go back to court next month in June, the 10th of June. They've been charged with contravening of the Electoral Act. One of the suspects, we are told, he has been employed by the district municipality of Mopani. And moving to Vuwani, Arnold Mulauzi, who's the lead of the pro-Mercado group, he was also granted 5,000 bail, and he will go back to court soon. So that's the situation here in Limpopo. I had a quick chat with the provincial leadership of EFF. They say they are banking on the biggest regions like Mopani, regions like Waterberg, and this region of Capricorn, where they have got a huge following. But that remains to be seen.
Thank you very much, Musa Mabunda, to us live there from Polokwane. And of course now in Bloemfontein, the IEC Election Centre is our reporter, Palisa Moeti. She's there. Palisa, I understand that in that particular part of the country, over 50% of the votes have been counted.
Yes, indeed, Griselda, over 50% of the votes have been counted, and I can tell you that at the moment the ANC is still leading, obviously, with about 60% of the votes, with the DA as the official opposition, as previously was the case, and they are with they have rather 17% of the votes, and then EFF is in third position with 11% of the votes, while the Freedom Front Plus has got 4% of the votes. But I mean, obviously, with 50% of voting stations having completed counting, it's still relatively early, but it kind of gives us a picture, obviously, of what's going to emerge. But right now, we are going to talk to the IEC's Itumeleng Leba just to take us through, what's the latest. Dr. Leba, thank you very much for talking to us.
Good evening, Palesa.
Just tell us, how far is the counting process? Are there any challenges that you're experiencing?
We have 1,529 voting stations, and we are done with counting in all those stations. We are at the moment busy capturing the results on our system, and we are left with capturing of about 515 voting stations. And there are 3 bigger municipalities involved there: Mangaung, Motlhaka, and Malotia Phofu. We predict that by tomorrow we'll be done with capturing of the results. The process is a bit tedious, and there is no possibility that we'll be done with capturing this evening.
All right, and then the issue of double voting is also seemingly has emerged in the Free State. Just let's talk about that.
Palesa, what has happened is all the problems that were reported by political parties to us have been finalized at our level. And the matter of double envelope or one person voting twice is now at the national level. It is receiving attention there. The Commission earlier made a statement that they are looking into the matter, and we think that late this evening we will know what the outcome is. But there is a sample, we understand, that will be audited, and we have reasons to believe that we may be part of that sample for further auditing.
So, but at this stage, is there a possibility of arrests that we've seen, for instance, in KZN?
If people voted and they should not have done that, or they fraudulently voted, those people will be caught out and they will definitely be arrested.
Okay. And I see that we also have auditors here. Just take us through, what are they busy with at the moment?
We have auditors from 2 different companies. The first group of auditors is from the PwC, and they are auditing results that are captured at the local level to ensure that everything matches the true records of what happened at the voting station. And we also have the second group of auditors, who are our internal auditors, ensuring that all our internal processes, our standard operating procedures are followed, and where there are instances of deviations, they will report accordingly.
And then the issues that some of the political parties raised yesterday, remember the issue with the ink on the ballot paper? And also I remember there was an issue about people still taking selfies. How did you resolve those?
We did not officially receive any complaint of people taking selfies. We did, however, receive complaints about people who were able to remove their indelible ink, and the Commission also addressed that this morning in the media briefing. It is one of those matters that are receiving attention at the national level.
Thank you very much. That is Mr. Itumeleng Leba from the IEC here in the Free State. We know now that counting is complete, and the process underway is the capturing, which will not be finalized today, but instead tomorrow. And Criselda, with that, it's back to you in studio.
Thank you very much, Palisa in Bloemfontein. Let's go now to the Northwest Province. One of the hotspots in the run-up to this election, Colin Limawane is there. Colin, what is the situation this evening?
Well, there's never a dull moment here in the Northwest Province, I can tell you, when you thought that voting had gone smoothly in various areas. We had several villages where the voters were not allowed to get into voting stations because members of the public were complaining about service delivery, and they told the IEC officials that they were not allowed to open their voting stations until the mayor had come to address them. And it was at the villages that I had mentioned in my earlier crossing, which were Madinonyani, Sitabeng, around the Karisano Molopo area. And of course, we heard earlier in the week that an IEC vehicle was torched. But what I can tell you, another incident that was very interesting was about an ANC councillor who had voted twice. So this issue of a double vote was identified by the EFF in Marikana in the northwest here, and he actually refuted the allegation, saying that if he had a chance to vote for the second time, then he could have gone to vote at all the voting stations. However, the EFF had said that they had proof that one person had voted twice. However, we had here in Mahikeng as well EFF members coming to us with a picture to prove that there was an objection of a vote that was done twice by an ANC councillor, and they said, or rather they claimed, that he had voted on Monday during the special vote and he came to vote in the northwest. So how can a person vote nationally during the special vote in another province and come to the northwest to vote again? So we spoke earlier to the IEC, and Dr. Tumelo Ntletiba had actually said that the IEC was not aware of this second incident. So it's been, rather, the matter has rather gone waxed cold, so to say. But otherwise, the 1,700 stations here are not yet closed, but counting has been done in several voting stations. For example, in Tswaying, there was a celebration here at the IEC that many people had finished their counting, but it's not yet anywhere close to 70%.
Thank you very much to our SABC reporter Colin Limawane, who is keeping tabs for us on results that are coming in, of course, in Mahikeng. Let's take a short break here on The Full View. Shortly after 7 o'clock, we'll be crossing to Stephen Grootes with all that's happening at the Rock in Pretoria now, with these small political parties calling for a rerun of the election, saying the process was unfair. But all of that when we get back.
What are your views on unemployment?
It's election year, and you've been asked an important question.
Unemployment is currently sitting at...
Don't take too long. Millions of voters are watching.
Sorry.
Is that a trickle of sweat?
First, let us talk about that.
Nailed it. Remembering is important. How long it takes you to remember is sometimes even more important.
In a UN report, scientists say climate change is getting worse.
1/3 of our food sources for the population come out of the ocean.
We spoke to people who have been directly affected.
We have lost a lot of cattle. Gemsbok Vlakte, Tosca gebied and Jakkalskop. Everywhere you will see there's animals dying.
I've lost 2 of my cattle this January.
Africa's demand for clean drinking water is rising.
Drinking water is a top priority.
The next day when the water comes back, it's dirty.
I have implemented a level 5 water restriction, effective immediately.
Environmentalists seek solutions to preserve the planet.
This is a Cape Kirpa, which is also one of the endemic species that is only found within the Western Cape, so it occurs nowhere else in the world except in our water systems.
In my time, I've truly seen it all firsthand. Angizwanga, ngizibonele ngalawam amehlo. Going through my photographs and reflecting on my memory box really brings back many life experiences that are bittersweet and humbling. In this, my homeland, I've entertained tourists and offshore traders. I've evolved from dealing with the battering system to trading foreign exchange. I've traveled to the ends of the world and tasted a diversity of culinary palates. To outsiders, I have lived alongside wild animals, tamed some, and collected livestock as wealth. So my memory box is overflowing. And don't get me wrong, I'm not bragging, but in fact, I'm breaking and hurting deep down inside of this heart of mine. Why? What for? I hear you ask yourself, my fellow Africans, friends and family. The images I have of me are those of the point of view of my onlooker, not those of myself, the subject at hand. I'm choking and suffocating at the chalice those anthropologists and filmmakers tie around me as some sort of grand name tag. Stories have been made and told of me, not of my own words. Films and graphic images have entertained millions of audiences at my expense.
We're explorers. We always have been, endlessly curious, always looking for answers, for new frontiers, for new stories. Because that is who we are. From script to screen, from yelling action to taking you on a journey. Radio producers, script writers, on-air presenters, news reporters, sports analysts. We spend late nights creating captivating storylines and earlier mornings keeping you informed, educated, and entertained. For us, it's not a job, it's a calling. We do this and more because you do your part. SABC TV licenses, made possible by you.
Well, welcome back to the Full View, of course, giving you a full view of all the election results as they trickle in. Of course, my colleague Stephen Huertas is at the Rock in Pretoria. Stephen, I hope you can hear me. What's the latest there?
Well, Griselda, thank you very much indeed. All right, let's have a look at some of the national figures. With me here, of course, to discuss them, the analyst Angelo Fick and the politics professor Susan Boyce. And just to tell you, we are keeping one seat spare. We're going to call it the hot seat for the next hour or so, expecting Patricia de Lille from the Good Party, and I think also Dr. Pieter Mulder, the former leader of the Freedom Front Plus. I imagine he'll be quite chuffed, if I can use that word, when he comes through to speak to us a bit later, but we'll go through all of those dynamics. As you can see, the national picture here, this is from the Electoral Commission website for the moment, and you can see, you know, when we look at a percentage of the vote that has been counted, just under 60%, 58.47% of the voting districts now completed, and you can see the ANC on 51%. Sorry, this is in Gauteng, so let's just go to the national picture very quickly, and you can see in the national picture the ANC sitting on 56.86%, the Democratic Alliance on 22.55%, and the EFF on 9.72%. So let me put this to the analysts, and I suppose in a way, let me start with you, Professor Boyson. In a way, the story of this election, in the national picture at least, is it's kind of what we thought. We expected the smaller parties not to do very well. Yes. We expected the top three to do very well, and they're all kind of in the ranges that were predicted.
Roughly, yes, and sometimes also lower ranges. And the ANC and the DA are the losers in this. The ANC bigger than the DA, and EFF not growing by as much as we had expected. But it is almost as if the last 5 years of politics have not happened. But the ANC is taking a knock here, and they're probably being punished for much of that, but not nearly as much as they would have been punished had it been Zuma years and continuing in that mode.
Angelo Fick, when we go through the numbers, there are lots of stories that are sort of hidden, and stories you actually have to look for. And I would suggest one of those stories might be about the United Democratic Movement led by Bantu Holomisa. I mean, a sort of stalwart, if I can call him that, with all of the political loading that includes. And yet it seems that he's lost significant support in this election.
And that's partly, I think, because of the shenanigans that went on in Nelson Mandela Bay and the way in which many people may have felt that that was an opportunistic approach by the UDM in that particular coalition conflagration realignment issue. And so I think this is also a moment in which those stalwart parties, plural, have had a moment of reckoning and a moment of truth confronting them.
The one party, of course, that goes against that is the Freedom Front Plus. Now, I mean, the Freedom Front Plus is sort of a family affair for many years, all sort of related to each other, all of their MPs, and yet it seems to have done quite well. Professor Boyson, I suppose we would have to say that the land issue, the expropriation without compensation, in a way, this is perhaps a reflection of that from a part of South Africa's democracy, from a part of South Africa's voting public.
Yes, indeed. I think they, on the basis of that, they brought previous support back from the DA, people who had gone to the DA in previous elections, and now the DA repositioning and DA drawing in somewhat more, not in massive numbers, but more black African support, for example, and compensating, pushing some out, pulling others in, and this gave the Freedom Front extra 2 percentage points in this outcome here. And they, of course, they think it's very natural and they're growing, and but it's not, they haven't suddenly become a massive party. And of course, they're having taken the BLF Blackland First to court in those legal tussles there, probably gave them very good opportunities for profiling themselves.
Is there a much bigger story here about the extremes of our politics? And what I'm talking about, the Freedom Front Plus on the sort of right, growing its support. Let me use the word sort of significantly for the moment. On the other side of things, you have the economic freedom fighters growing their support significantly as well. I would use that word there. Angelo, does this worry you that we have the middle almost being squeezed? We have the extremes of our politics, and both of these parties would deny that they're on the extremes, but the extremes of our politics actually gaining support in this way.
I don't actually read them as extremes in that way, and I don't think of them in the same way as related to the centre of South African politics. The centre of South African politics is, as you rightly point out, populated by the African National Congress and by the Democratic Alliance. And I have the approach of somebody like Tariq Ali that it is actually a dangerous centre, because it is in that centre that all sorts of policies are passed that have made the society the unequal society that it is. There's often this assumption that all of the malaise and problems of contemporary South Africa can be laid at the hands of colonialism and apartheid. But we have built the society of inequality over the last 25 years on the bedrock of apartheid and colonialism. And the centrist parties need to take some responsibility for having passed policies that in some senses enabled that. So the energy insecurity, the very bad education policies, those are all deeply centrist policies that even the World Bank and World Economic Forum people and the IMF are beginning to question the consequences of. And so when I think of the Freedom Front Plus and the economic freedom fighters, I think of the one as a fringe element in South African politics, because they represent a certain way of looking at the country that is perhaps founded in a heterodox view of what it is we have. The other one, the economic freedom fighters, is to me a very different sort of issue, which is a mixed bag of critiques that don't really offer how in a constitutional democracy the critiques and proposals that they make will be realized in their lifetime as a party.
Right, I'm going to stand up again and we're going to look at the Gauteng numbers. Now, we're going to just do something before we talk about the Gauteng numbers, but let's just go to those Gauteng numbers very quickly. And what's interesting about the Gauteng numbers, I think, and that in a way it's not necessarily being noticed, is that if you look at the Gauteng numbers, what you're seeing is that the ANC is still just above 50% there, but the Democratic Alliance on 26%. Now in Gauteng, we're looking at just under half of the votes being captured, or half of the voting districts actually reporting. What's really interesting about this, though, is that at the moment, the DA, on the projections that we have, the Democratic Alliance is going to get a smaller percentage of votes in Gauteng than it actually did in 2014. And Angelo, I would suggest that's actually quite a big move. In a way, that's one of the stories of the election. The DA has done worse in Gauteng in this election than it did 5 years ago.
And that's something that they would have to explain, and part of that explanation may just have arrived on the set. But part of that explanation also has to lie in, it's one thing to be in opposition and having your opposition record as the basis on which you want voters to judge you, and it's another to have governed the city of Johannesburg and the city of Tshwane and having voters judge you on that performance over the last 2.5 years in what is now a general election. It's an unfair judgment, but it is certainly one that the Democratic Alliance would have to deal with.
All right, well, let's welcome to our set here at the election centre the leader of the Good Party, Patricia de Lille. Of course, the Good Party is fighting its first election, although Patricia de Lille is not fighting her first election. Patricia, good evening to you. Thank you so much.
Good evening, Steve.
Okay, how are you feeling tonight? I mean, you've got, I think, 0.58% of the vote. You've been watching the votes coming in through the day. You're probably looking at maybe 2 seats in Parliament.
First of all, we're very grateful for any votes that we are getting, and I want to thank South Africans for that. For us, it's a victory because we've only been 4 months old, and we are busy putting the foundation so that we continue to build on the next 2 years leading up to 2021. So it is a start, but you know, we live in a multi-party democracy. And as part of the contestation that we see today, is a contestation of ideas. And we put in our idea of building a good country, looking for good people. Good people are not racist. Putting a plan to how to fix South Africa forward, and that's what we've put before the electorate. And so now that we've received some votes and maybe some seats, we will go and implement that mandate.
One of the sort of dynamics around your party is whether or not it's going to be based, or everyone's using the word stronghold this election, in the Western Cape. I mean, in the Western Cape provincial election, you got 3% of the vote there. I'd have to check the maths. I don't know if that'll give you a seat in the provincial legislature. Are you expecting that it will?
Well, no, we didn't go out with any expectations. We know that we tried our best to do what we can in the space of 4 months, and therefore for us it's a victory to get votes anywhere in the country. And we will be happy with whatever votes we get in the end of this elections.
You're not disappointed at all that it doesn't look at the moment that you will hold the balance of power in any way? I mean, it was a terrible falling out with the Democratic Alliance.
No, we never participated in election thinking who we're going to go jump into bed with. We knew that it's 4 months and we have to put in everything. In fact, I enjoyed the 4 months more than sitting here at the IEC Centre waiting for results to come in. Yeah.
Can I ask, I mean, if you'll forgive me, you are one of the smaller parties.
Yeah.
We saw a large grouping of the smaller parties about an hour ago now as the full view came to air tonight, and they were contesting the results of the election. They say it's not free and fair, they're lodging complaints, etc. Are you joining them in that, or do you see things differently?
No, I understand that there was a caucus of the smaller parties, and already we are being branded as the biggest of the smallest parties. But we were together during the IEC briefing, where all political parties accepted the IEC's commitment, one, to go and investigate the allegations of, you know, the indelible ink, and that they will come back to us before they make the final announcement. The IEC informed us about the arrest that's being made, and I thought everybody was happy with that. I certainly feel that we should give them the space to go and investigate and then come back to us. I wasn't aware about what happened just about half an hour ago.
All right. Patricia, if I may, I mean, you have been through several parties over time. You're starting a new party now.
So what?
Well, it's not a. It's a fact. I'm not making a comment. You'll know if I'm making a comment. The point I'm making is that to start a political party is actually quite. I mean, let's put it this way: the economic freedom fight is sort of 6 years old. You know, 10% of the vote. It's hard work, is the point that I'm making.
Yes, yes.
You're ready for what's going to be a long uphill fight, and at least probably another election away from being a substantial force in South African politics. There's a lot of work you would have to do.
You know, many people have asked me, why did you start the Good Movement or the new party? And my answer was simple: because I can. It's my constitutional right. And I think it's elections that do the sifting. I hear the media complain about 29 parties participating, but you forgot to recognize the right of those people to do it. And then now, after this election, some parties must probably disappear. And then next election, they will come again. So we just have to get used to the multi-party democracy. It's hard work. You need resources. You need committed people. And that is why we had researched some solutions, tried and tested solutions in our plan how to fix South Africa. So you don't have to, as an opposition party, just repeat
all the problems all over again, but you actually put solutions on the table. And I'll put it to a DA government or to an ANC government and say, can we try this solution? It's going to be hard work, but like I was saying, for me it is the phase of my life that I'm designing. I certainly have not been bruised by this terrible abusive relationship that I've been in, because I've said nobody will get me down.
You've done some bruising of your own, though. Those boxing gloves of yours were quite effective.
So really, Stephen, for me, it's my love for the country. I'm a patriot. I want to see my country succeed, you know.
Patricia Diddle, thank you very much indeed for coming through, the leader of the Good Party there. All right, I'm going to ask you to stay with us. Let's just get a quick moment with our analysts. Just, if you don't mind us talking about you while you're still here. One of those things that shouldn't happen, but I'm afraid is going to. Professor, I mean, convincing, I see you wearing orange. I don't know if that was deliberate. The colours of the Good Party.
I plead innocence.
So, I mean, what we do see is that someone like Patricia Diddle, if I may say, fierce, determined, back possibly in the National Assembly, I mean, can actually have quite an impact. We've seen that happen with smaller parties in the past. Yes,
we would like to remember that the arms deal revelations in that public forum first came from the Honourable. And would you imagine that you repeat that kind of moment? How do you see your role in Parliament? Have you got any specific ideas on how to profile your party, big issues that you would like to put on the agenda in the interest of this multi-party democracy?
Most definitely, Prof. You know, what also inspired me every morning in this short campaign was that I also was thinking about breaking this toxic male masculinity that you see in Parliament. To fight to get more women representation in Parliament is not enough. We need women in leadership. And I've certainly been never intimidated by size, whether you are a big party or a small party. It's always been about issues. So I've already established a corruption desk. There are some 5 emails that came in already, another 4 for municipality. So I will be focusing again on corruption. But the second issue that I want to focus on, and that affects all governments at all levels, is the issue of spatial planning. You know, race and space still too much determine where you live today. And we've not done enough since 1994 to deal with the apartheid spatial planning. And that's also going to be one of my key issues. And then, of course, environmental justice. And then the whole issue about women and young people. I don't want to see a women's league or a youth league. They must be part and parcel of the mainstream to drive those issues within our society today. Yes, I've got a plan. I'm very excited. Some will listen to my plan, some won't, but it's also their democratic right.
But has Cape Town really done very well in terms of spatial planning and big business encroaching on historical areas like Observatory, for example?
Oh, no, I know that gentrification certainly, but at least I released 12 parcels of land very close to the city and wanted to bring integration to that way.
I'm afraid the campaigning is over. Very quickly, Angelo Fick, I mean, Patricia Diddle does make a very good point, surely, about the masculinity. She uses the word toxic masculinity in Parliament.
So yes, it is more than just a matter of numbers. In South African politics, having the presence of women is not enough. We live in a constitutional democracy. We have the Commission for Gender Equity. We have a feminist constitution and a feminist judiciary and judicial system in some respects that doesn't work itself out in the practice of how in a country with this kind of femicide we experience this. And so it is very important then for members of Parliament to agitate beyond their party's interests for the interests of the 54% of the population that has to live with the toxicity created in this country for the majority on an everyday basis.
All right. If you're watching on SABC 2, good evening to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. And of course, we will keep you very much up to date with the numbers, with the personalities, with the politicians, with the analysts. If you want to know what's happening, if you want to feel it, you're absolutely in the right place. Let's go back to Griselda, who's standing by in our Joburg studios, and let's have a look at what's happening around the country.
Thank you very much, Stephen, live from Pretoria there at the Resolve Centre. Let's go now to our reporters. Let's continue our live coverage right through the country. In Mbombela, Mpumalanga, our reporter Spepile Kunene is there. Hi, Spepile. What's the latest in your region?
Hi, Crisilda. We're coming to you from Mbombela, the IEC, where the IEC is in Nelspruit, Mbombela. We'll be talking to Sbusiso from the IEC, who will be giving us the latest in terms of figures as to who is where now. How far are you? We understand that you have already covered 5 municipalities. How far are you? Are you on the 6th? Are you on the 7th? How far is it?
Yeah, currently we're on the 6th. We're looking forward to welcoming our colleagues on the 7th one. We're currently at 72% of the total votes. So we're expecting like it will trickle slowly, and yeah, by the end of maybe the night, we'll be at around 80%. As I said before, they will come slowly, and then, you know, at some stage, then everything will come at once. It's due to the fact that our colleagues down there are meticulously planning so that, you know, the capturing process, you know, it's legitimate, and, you know, everything, the auditing of the vote or rather of the results goes smoothly, and we can be sure that these are the results that, you know, are accurate.
Okay, in terms of incidences and wrong occurrences during the process of voting, how many municipalities or voting stations were disturbed? Do we have anything like that?
No, in the province we don't have anything like that. Voting went smoothly, and yeah, as I said, now we're capturing and we are getting all the results.
When can we expect this exercise to finish?
Well, you can't tell, but you know, the Electoral Commission always promises to deliver the results on a Saturday after the election. So as a province, we are sticking to that. We promise that on a Saturday, our results will be complete.
Thank you. That was Busiso Nkosi from the IEC based here in Mbombela. And next, we'll be speaking to Swap, one of those that are down there at the bottom, but they are happy. They're saying they're happy with what's happening. To tell us more here is Makhanya. Makhanya, just give us a brief idea as to what's going on. Are you guys happy with what's happening? How is your party performing?
Currently, the support and the vote that we have received from our members or whoever is supporting Socialist Revolutionary Workers' Party, we are happy. We are pleased with the results, although the legitimacy of the current incident that has taken place, or challenges of people voting more than once, it also put it into question so if the results indeed they are legitimate. But as far as the results are concerned, we are not that happy, but we are pleased to say people are into socialism. As you know, we are a socialist party. We want to pursue socialism and we want to overthrow capitalism. So for the fact that we are getting a response from the community and the province, it's really impressive. And because currently we are sitting at number 13, and the voting that we have received, the numbers, it's satisfying for now.
Okay, let's project forward. Moving forward, do you see a brighter future? Do you see you guys performing better than you are doing now?
Indeed, we see ourselves going forward, because actually us contesting this election, it was form of ground testing, and then we have realized that we do have support, and our mobilization has worked, taking cognizance that we've only launched the party a month ago, which was in April, but currently the votes that we are receiving, it shows that we are in the path of growing the organization, and indeed we see ourselves pursuing socialism and implementing it and overthrowing capitalism, especially in Mpumalanga. We are receiving overwhelming support from the workers and the unemployed, all of them.
Pepile Gunene keeping tabs for us on the results in Mpumalanga. Thank you very much to all our reporters for staying up for hours, of course, giving us live coverage as those results continue to trickle in. Let's go back to Stephen Huertas now at The Rock in Pretoria. Stephen?
Griselda, thank you very much indeed. We've got an array of political figures coming through, rumbling through our studios, if I can use that phrase. You'll see and hear Fikile Mbalula, the chief campaigner, the chief elections organizer for the African National Congress, in a few minutes. But first, let's speak to the former leader of the Freedom Front Plus. And the Freedom Front Plus, in a way, one of the stories of this election. In the last election, got just over 1% of the vote. Already at this stage, on the projections and from the percentage of the vote that's been counted, is on 2.63%. Of course, Still a lot more votes to come in. We're sort of just past the halfway stage. But Dr. Peter Mulder, good evening to you and thank you for coming in tonight.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Stephen.
Former leader of this party that now has increased its support, I imagine you're very pleased.
Yes, I'm very pleased. I've been at this place since 1994, and I think this is the best one and from that stage. I'm not the leader anymore, let me just put that, so I can't speak on behalf of, but as an analyst and as an ex-leader, I'm really thankful for what's happening, and I think certain things came through. For the first time, people start understanding the system, that you cannot waste your vote on a small party, that the DA cannot win on its own, and that type of argument we've been using for 20 years, and I think it's coming through now, and hopefully people are voting more according to how they believe.
You say all of that, but surely the most important thing was the decision taken at Nasrec by the ANC to expropriate land without compensation. Isn't that what pushed up your share of the vote?
I think it helped a lot. Of course it helped. That it helped. EFF helped. The BLF helped. And I'm very negative, worried about this, what I said, polarization of South Africa. It's not good for anyone. I'm a South African. I'm here to stay. And that is a bad situation, but surely it played a part that we are polarized at the moment, and I don't think that's ideal, but it did play a role, without any doubt, yeah.
So you're very worried about polarization in our society?
Well, I think so. If I may quote, I quoted Mr. Mandela more than once in Parliament. He said, if the good people of different parties come together, this is a beautiful country. But if the bad ones come together, we're going to fight and conflict. And I'm afraid we had a very bad patch of polarization. That's easy politics. It's easy to work people up on emotions, on race, whatever. It's more difficult to play the other way around.
You say you're worried about polarization, and yet the slogan on all of the banners for your party was Slaan terug, hit back.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything that's more polarizing than that slogan.
Well, the reality is, technically, it's not mean physical, of course, but I think people are really at the stage after what happened to say, you either got the choice, and I'm not talking about white people, I'm sorry to say white people, but the EFF targeted white people. Mr. Zuma said Jan van Riebeeck, you know, and they say you either leave the country, and I'm afraid a lot of very professional guys are leaving, young ones, or you stay, and I'm staying. And then if you stay, you said, which party will then for the best look after my interest? And sure, I think that did play a role with the Freedom Front. They had a good campaign as well, but that was for more or less maybe we're going to stay, we've got the crazy here to stay, we want to make a contribution, but surely don't discriminate against us.
Right, I mean, surely someone could have used the phrase be heard rather than hit back.
It's very complicated. Yeah. Well, the academic guys would like to be heard.
You're a professor of communication. Come
yes, and because I'm a professor of communication, they never become presidents because they're too academic. You must get to the normal people. Maybe that one worked better. The results show that.
Dr. Peter Mulder, thank you very much indeed. Former leader of the Freedom Front Plus, speaking also with us with Pat as an analyst. We're going to go back to the studio in Johannesburg for a couple of moments. When we come back to here in Pretoria, the chief campaigns organizer, the chief elections organizer for the ANC, Fikile Mbaluda. Griselda, back to you.
Well, thank you very much, Stephen. We continue crossing to our reporters around the country at the IEC Centre in Cape Town. Is our reporter Bulelani Philip. We understand at this stage, of course, the DA at 55%, Bulelani, and the ANC at 28%. To give us the latest figures.
Well, good evening to you, Griselda, and to the viewers. Of course, at this hour, at 84.23 votes declared, we seem to have an outright winner in the DA, standing at 55%. So there won't be a need in this province for a coalition, perhaps maybe compared to other provinces. Of course, the ANC coming second at 28.79%, the EFF at 3.72%, the Good Party at 3.12%, the ACDP is at 2%, and the Freedom Front Plus at 1.74%. The other 42 parties that contested the elections in the province all remaining just about 1% or just below. We're going to take you now across the floor on this IEC Centre in the Western Cape just to get reactions from some of the main players here in the province. Now joining me is the Provincial Secretary of the ANC, Mr. Faiz Jacobs. Sorry, I know you're observing, breaking your fast there. Thank you so much for joining us. Just for you guys, stagnant at 28.79%. Your first assessment?
Thank you, Bulelani. Now, look, we still have about 200 voting stations outstanding in mainly your Cape Town metro area, and that is traditionally your Mfuleni, your Delft, and even in the city BD area. But let me just share some of our initial reflections. I think the one positive note is that we see communities like Buka, Lansdowne, and Rylands coming out and supporting us. as the ANC. So you'll see a shift away from the coloured middle class supporting the ANC. The ANC supported the gentrification campaign and the heritage campaign in Bukap, and we've got that support in that communities. But we are concerned about our African voter turnout. On the election day, better planning had to be made by the IEC for the inclement weather. We had reports of long lines, zips, ballot papers, and we also feel that a lot of our traditional support bases was denied a voting opportunity because of the long lines and the running out of ballots. So I think that for us is a key concern. On the positive note, also we've also reclaimed a lot of the municipalities and the non-metro areas, like identified Witzenberg, Cedarburg, where we've improved. So overall, there's a mixed bag. We are disappointed that we didn't get the support on the Cape Flats as anticipated, but I think what we're feeling there is that the Swatgevaar campaign was brought out, and the ethnic mobilization where they pitted coloured communities against African communities was successful, and I think we are very concerned that we shouldn't allow that. Some parties argue for one nation, but we're saying that there must not be a mobilization on that. When they say keep EFF and ANC out in the Western Cape, where the DA at the same time at the national level have an EF arrangement. So those are some...
I'm sorry, we're going to run out of time. I'm sure you'll need a lot of time, and going back to the boardroom in terms of planning better, in terms of increasing your vote. Thank you very much for your time. Faiz Jacobs is the Provincial Secretary of the ANC in the province. I'm going to move over to the stand of the DA, the provincial leader, Mr. Bonginkosi Matikizela Mandela. Remaining strong and outright majority, you must be pleased.
I'm very pleased. In fact, I want to attribute this performance to all the voters out there who braved, the weather yesterday, stood, in the rain and in a long queues to make sure that we retain the Western Cape, and more importantly to our activists. I mean, those are our heroes. So we are not taking, this confidence lightly. We've got to make sure that we really go out there and improve on the issues of service delivery, particularly on our offers. I mean, we must make sure that the issues of jobs is also one of the issues that we'll tackle, and also improve, just basic service delivery across the province. So we are really grateful, but we are also aware that this is not a blank check. We've got to make sure that we now, just build on the legacy that we left in the last 10 years.
All right, thank you so much for your time, Mr. Bonginkosi Matikizela. He is the provincial leader of the DA. I'm going to move to the other side. I'm now joined by Melikaya Xhego, who is the provincial leader of the EFF. Sir, you must be disappointed, perhaps maybe coming in at 3.72. Would have hoped for higher votes?
Indeed, but we have noted the kind of...
All right, we'll have to leave our reporter Bulelani Philip there in the Western Cape. Of course, with the Democratic Alliance, of course, no surprise there. Doesn't seem like the ANC had it within them to take the province, which they'd so long been wanting. But of course, let's go to Stephen Huertas now at The Rock. He will continue discussions with his analysts there.
All right, Griselda, thank you very much indeed. There seemed to be a technical problem a moment ago. I am sorry about that. We're back here now at the Results Operations Centre in Pretoria, joined by the head of elections for the African National Congress, Fikile Mbalula. Fikile, good evening to you. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, and thank you for having us, and to all viewers at home.
All right, so I mean, at the moment, you're sitting on sort of 56.84%. That's with over half of the vote counted, 60% of the vote counted. It's a long way from 62%.
It's a long way from 62%, but we're quite delighted because we conducted a very difficult campaign against a backdrop of heavy loss. And we know that we have had to answer for part of that loss in relation to issues on the ground amongst our people. We then conducted a heavy campaign, door-to-door voter contact, and a wall-to-wall campaign. which is actually giving us this particular result.
Quite a lot of things happened during the election campaign which haven't really happened before, and by that I'm talking about the unity of the ANC divisions in the party. In the past, during elections, those have usually been healed or glossed over. I mean, in this case, you had the book about Ace Magashule, you had all sorts of things happening, sort of veiled comments around each other. Did the divisions in the ANC that still seem to exist actually damage you in this campaign?
Indeed, our research also told us that our people are not interested in the divisions. We have had to rein in on a whole lot of other people in the party in terms of projecting the ANC as a divided party. Obviously, unity is not an event, it's a process. Coming from Nasrec has entirely given us this result, getting our leaders showing confidence in the new leadership of the ANC and so on, also added quite positive into the campaign, but it also shows that there is still a lot that we need to do to build on unity and undermine disunity and all other elements that are negative within the African National Congress.
So as a political party, from 99 onwards, you've gone down. So it was, 99, and then through to 2014, you went from 69%, I think it was, to 62. And then it looks like you're probably going to settle around 56, 57. It does look like a downward slide, 15 years of momentum going one way. Do you really think that the ANC will actually be able to turn around and get above 60% in the future? Or is this decline terminal?
No, this result, if it even arrives at that point, it shows a turnaround. Our people say, we trust you, but we want to see you doing more. And this is where we come from battering of 2016. And in this particular instance, we will make a thorough analysis of that, but we are way on track, because we knew that 2019 was going to be a difficult campaign. We knew that even to climb that ladder up to 56, 57, up to 60 was not going to be easy for us. And we worked very hard and pushed our president to the fore and all the officials. And it tells a story that Nasrec was a turnaround for us. Shouldn't we have actually turned around through that conference? We could have gone bet. And this is one thing that we note in the early stages, that the Nasrec conference of the ANC, the resolution, the leadership that came out of that conference turned around the ANC in terms of good fortunes going forward. We need to build on that.
If I was a critic of the ANC, I would say that is Nasrec actually finished?
Nasrec is not probably finished in the minds of others, but this campaign also helped us to heal the wounds, to see where we've got weaknesses. Remember, we had a lot of challenges in Northwest, and we had a lot of challenges in also areas like in the Free State. We had some challenges in other provinces as well. This election gave us an opportunity to build a momentum of camaraderie, coming close, but equally attend to the issues as they come decisively that affect the image of the ANC negatively.
Let's talk about what is probably the good news for you, is Gauteng. Now, there are various predictions that are being made. Just under 50% of the vote counted in Gauteng. You're still on 51.85%. Some of the predictions I've seen sort of have you at 49.5%, but the way the seat allocation works, even on that basis, you probably still retain a control in Gauteng. You would be quite pleased, quite relieved at that.
Yes, of course. I mean, we worked very hard in Gauteng, and we didn't, as much as many people said it's contested, it's a battleground, and the ANC will lose Gauteng, and so on. But we worked very hard, and we went straight to our people, and we didn't run this campaign in which you buzz people. It's a waste of time and resources. Our biggest thing in this campaign was reaching out to people, and even in their houses we're humbled and so on, because they opened up and they started to tell us where and what they think about us, and we had to examine that, looking at our poll and so on, and registering overwhelming victory for us was equally important. And we did a whole lot of things. And Gauteng responded well because we worked flat out here in Gauteng, particularly in the bigger areas. And it turns out that the response has been good. But that response, that is good and that is affirming us and so on. And the leadership of President Ramaphosa, it says, continue to do the good work. We had issues of trust with you. But even if we trust you not entirely, we will want to see things changing for the better. So it's equally thumbs up, but with a huge challenge on us to do things in the right way.
All right. One of the things that's happened, and you might have seen it, I don't know if you were in the hall, it was just an hour and a half ago, a group of the smaller parties, not all of them, some of them have had a caucus. They clearly are very unhappy with the way that the Electoral Commission has run this. They're calling for it to be rerun in some cases. They're saying that they will launch some kind of action. Your response to that, I mean, do you think the election needs to be rerun?
No, I mean, we've got the processes in terms of the elections. And we've got the PLC where all political parties meet and they go there and raise their issues. So we can't run parallel processes and then turn this thing into a banana republic and undermine, you know, hard-earned democracy and this electoral process. Everybody can be disgruntled about this and that. They've got to test those things within the ambit of the PLC and resolve issues at that particular point. We ourselves as the ANC, many of our supporters, we believe, got out of the queues and they did not vote because there was a shortage of ballot boxes there and there. But we cannot stand up here and say that because of that, the elections are not free and fair. We've had a lot of challenges. Our party agents, we worked on them and all of that. We've got all sorts of rumors of double voting and all of that. We're working on those particular cases, working with all other political parties. At the end, this is our system. It is our country. It has been there for 25 years and it has done wonders for us. Where there are weaknesses, we must criticize IEC constructively because it affects our party vote, the morale of the voters. I mean, the whole day we're dealing with shortages of, and now stories of ink and all of that. But all of those issues must be attended in the spirit of building and moving forward.
Fikile Mbalula, thank you very much indeed, the head of elections for the African National Congress. All right, in a moment, Shante and Yavi will take the pulse of the nation looking at social media. Stay with us.
We're explorers. We always have been. Endlessly curious, always looking for answers, for new frontiers, for new stories. Because that is who we are. From script to screen, from yelling action to taking you on a journey. Radio producers, script writers, on-air presenters, news reporters, sports analysts. We spend late nights creating captivating storylines and earlier mornings keeping you informed, educated, and entertained. For us, it's not a job, it's a calling. We do this and more because you do your part. SABC TV licenses, made possible by you.
We've seen that Brent crude oil rise about 30% this year alone.
Brent crude that's going steadily firmer speaks to a global economy that's in good shape. What we don't want to see are supply interruptions or sudden spikes.
The Bank of Athens has become GrowBank. It plans to be a bank using digital and personable relations with its customers in the agricultural and food value chain space.
We're a lucky bank in that we are small. We're already working with artificial intelligence to allow us to manage our customer data.
Agriculture is a business. If we're going to take people, millions of them out of poverty, we've got to turn agriculture into a mega sector that works for everybody.
Right, hello again. Now for a look at who and what people are saying or what's making waves on social media. Here to help me track the pulse of the polls is social media analyst Yavi Modurai as well as Shante. Guys, already on social media, we see a lot of people talking about this call for a rerun. Talk us through that. What else is trending?
So there's all the different hashtags around election results, which obviously attaches to the whole rerun. And obviously Jimmy Manyi is trending for all the wrong reasons / the rerun. So he's there. So it's gonna be an interesting play out over the next hour.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
Right.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Crisalda. Of course, myself, Shante Ankis, as well as Yavi Mudurai. As social media expert, we've been taking you through the Eye on elections this week. We ran a poll earlier on as to see how voters are faring with the SA elections 2019 so far. So let's actually have a look at some of the results that we've seen come in from this poll. 31% Yavi are saying they're happy. 28% are saying that they're worried. The 41% are saying, I'm still waiting for more. What exactly is that more that they're waiting for?
So remember now, we've got all this drama happening about the validity of the results, and all these 17 people were arrested in KZN. So we've got all of this playing out as a main story, yet the elections and the results should have been the main story. So I'm waiting for more. And if you look at it from I just ran the stats in terms of sentiment, and the sentiment normally the day after elections is quite positive because the adrenaline rush, you know, you feel like you're empowered. Today, the sentiment is actually quite low, and that is confirming the sentiment in terms of the analysis.
Well, speaking of analysis and sentiment, earlier on in the week we had a traditional healer actually come and speak to Crisalda Lewis, in fact, earlier on this week, predicting the possible election results that we would be having. So let's have a look at that clip and see how Gogo's predictions have fared so far up until the current polls.
As I ask the ancestors and I look into my calabash, the predictions that actually come by is that the ANC will be the ruling party again, and it will be 60.7.
Well, indeed, she's predicted that 60.7% or so. Currently, we are seeing the ANC in some parts of South Africa leading with a 50% majority. So let's actually have a look and discuss the results that we've been seeing. Also, people on Twitter seem to be shocked with the forefront of what they seem to think are new parties, like your Freedom Front Plus.
Yes, so I saw it, we were just talking about it before the break, is that some of the funniest tweets that have come out is that the duplications have been for the Freedom Front Plus. So let's see.
So we're going to have a look at some of those tweets coming in. This one says, it seems like most people voted nationally for the ANC, provincially for the DA, and twitterally for the EFF. Hashtag election results. Well, these are just some of the reactions we saw on Twitter saying Auntie Pat's party is doing well, given that she's left the DA and immediately started good. There's one more here. Retweet if you didn't know that the Freedom Front Plus actually existed. Hashtag elections. Now, this was one of the things that was actually trending today, with a lot of people actually not knowing who they were, and also more importantly that they're faring in most parts of top 3 and top 5.
Yes. Yeah. So that is one of the criticisms of the media in general has been that there hasn't been much coverage of the smaller parties. Patricia DeLille just now said that her party's 4 months old. So it's very interesting that we have the Freedom Front Plus to be able to I mean, that's a figure that no one anticipated. But that's what's driving some of the social content and some of the social conversations and the memes.
Oh, definitely. And also, of course, not to forget that what we see on Twitter and what we see on social media might not necessarily be the direct reflection of what voters are going to actually mark their X in terms of making that actual vote. And of course, we're also going to have a look at some of the other tweets there with regards to some voters already sharing the sentiment, calling for the rerun of elections.
So Jimmy Manyi has led led that, Jimmy Money has led that particular narrative to be able to say the smaller parties at a disadvantage in some shape or form, he's justified it, and that there should be a rerun. There's obviously questions about this rerun, so yeah.
Yeah, well, this is with regards to the discrepancies and the IEC protocol. We've also seen smaller parties in the previous hour coming forward in that media briefing saying that they are wanting to call for a rerun. Rerun is what is needed with so many things that came forward. Ballot papers being found before elections, people voting more than once, the ink that quickly faded, votes that were stolen, videos of people caught with votes and proof of dead people that, inverted commas, voted.
That is just, it blows the mind that after all these years, we can't do one job.
Yeah, Gloria says it is safe to say that these elections were not free and fair. Disappointed in IEC South Africa. Well, yeah, these are just images also coming through that we've also managed to find of spoilt ballot papers, ballot boxes that have seemed to have gone missing. There was also the question of ballot boxes and IEC officials coming to collect them without necessarily being attended or escorted by the correct security contingent.
Doesn't that just like freak you out when you look at that, knowing what value these boxes have within them? Like, it just, and that's why social media, you know, it's the pulse of the people, it's the voice of the people.
The pulse of the people, the eye on elections. Well, that's a wrap up, at least just for now, from Eye on Elections. We'll continue to keep you updated on the trends, specifically on social media. We're going to cross over live to The Rock as Stephen Croesus has more.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's go now to the floor here at the Results Operations Centre. Busisiwe Jemsana has been lining up some guests for us. I think there's a fair amount of red being worn by these guests. She's going to speak to Phakamile Hlube Majola from the Socialist Revolutionary Workers' Party. Busisiwe, over to you on the floor.
For a good afternoon, Stephen. Well, things are very tense on the floor all around, all parties' eyes fixed on that board where they are watching the results as they cripple in, trying to see how the party is doing as the results come in. And I'm joined by Phakamile Hlube Majola. Your party has recently been formed to stand for the poor and the working class, but people don't seem to be responding to that. Why is that?
Well, first of all, I think we need to be very clear that as the SRWP, when we made the decision to contest elections late last year in December, we were very clear that the 2019 elections were by no means a barometer of our trajectory. The 2019 election outcome would in no way determine whether or not we are relevant when it comes to the issues of the working class and the poor. We are the only political formation which is fighting for the destruction of the capitalist system, which is responsible for inequality, poverty and unemployment in this country. And even when you look at the election results, it's become patently clear. We participated in these elections knowing full well that the IEC as an institution is part of the capitalist bourgeoisie system whose role is to endorse the power of the capitalist class. And if you look at all of the irregularities which have taken place this week and during the elections, that has been proven to us. We were very clear to our members that this is not at all a revolutionary institution which is going to guarantee a radical transformation in the ordinary lives of the working class. And we've been proven right. And this is particularly why, as the SRWP, we join other 15 political parties in rejecting the elections process. We reject the idea that these elections are free and fair, because they were not.
On the one hand, you speak about the party having decided that these elections were not the deciding factor for you as a party. On the other, you speak about the irregularities of the IEC. Are you then contributing where you are on that list in terms of numbers to the IEC, or to the party not having time, or the party having decided that these elections were not going to put it there on the map in the political sphere of things?
Well, for us, we've been very clear that the 2019 elections are not a destination. And in fact, for us, more than anything, the elections were an opportunity for us to mobilize. They were an opportunity for us to raise the levels of consciousness of the working class. They were an opportunity for us to unite members of the working class. As a result of us having participated in the elections, we've managed to grow our support base. We've managed to ensure that SRWP exists in every single province. We also have the endorsement of one of the biggest and largest working class formations, which is Abahlali Basemjondolo. So for us, those are very important things. What happens with the IEC, what happens in terms of what media analysts say, for us is frankly not important, because these are not the people that we are trying to win. We are trying to win over members of the working class. We are acting in their interests, and for us, that's always been our agenda.
Phakamile Hlubi Majola, thank you so much for your time. Well, Phakamile Hlubi Majola saying there, for them, the numbers mean nothing. All that is important to them is securing the vote and securing the trust of the working class and the poor. We continue to talk to small parties, and with me, I'm joined by the Acting Secretary General of the NFP. The NFP has been losing support since 2014. You're not doing well now. What went wrong?
Thank you. Thank you. We are aware that we are not doing good since 2014. I think that the biggest problem was when we didn't participate in the 2016 local government election. This has caused a lot of problems, more especially when it comes to financial issues. We lost councillors and we failed to secure some funds. So immediately, when you don't have funds, then you cannot do well in politics. In order to do well in politics, you need a lot of funds so that you will run your campaign properly, you will do everything. That was our biggest fault.
Does not having stable, in lack of a better word, leadership to lead the NFP, because the president of the NFP has been not well for quite some time, does that have any role in the numbers that we see and you losing the support in these elections?
Well, I cannot say that has an effect, because currently we are having an interim National Executive Committee which has been functioning according to the court order that was granted on the 7th of September 2018. Since then, we have tried to bring back stability. As of now, everything is well. Our biggest loser was there were those who didn't take us to the election. You know, they have defected to other political parties, so that's how they thank the members by defecting to other political parties, since they know that they didn't take us to the local government election. But I will assure you there is stability now, as we are saying we'll be going to the national conferences by December, where we'll have a proper leadership that will take the party forward, and we hope that they will do better, because we are also preparing 2021 for the local government, and we are considering what is happening now as a payback time for what we have lost in 2016.
All right, Zwaikem, SABC, thank you so much for your time. Well, the results continue to cripple in, and there are disgruntled parties, as you've seen the protests that have taken place. Certainly, the issue of the indelible ink that has been used by the IEC has tainted these elections, but the IEC continues to say that it has measures in place. It will institute an investigation. Whether or not, following that investigation, the parties that are protesting against the process leading up to this day will accept the outcomes of those investigations will be something that we'll be monitoring, and will be keeping you up to date with wall-to-wall coverage of these elections here at the Results Center. Back to you in studio, Stephen.
Thank you very much indeed. All right, we're looking through the results now, and of course, two analysts with me, Angelo Fick and Professor Susan Boyson. Professor Boyson, I can see you've been doing lots of maths. You've got scribbles all over your notebook. You're looking at the board that we're looking at on TV at the moment. At this stage, from your calculations, how many parties, we had 48 on the ballot, how many 8 are actually going to Parliament?
We know for sure about 7, 8, maybe 9 of them, definitely. There could be 2 or 3 that's sneaking on a 0.25% of the vote, and maybe on the residual vote 1 or 2 more. But so overall, we're not looking at more than a quarter of the parties that actually contested on the national ballot to end up in Parliament. And provincially, it does not look much better. Small proportions of the overall number of contestants will be there. And so the board behind us really resembles a battlefield of fallen parties. Some haven't been living for a long time, but it's probably the end.
And the provinces, obviously each province will have its own different dynamics, but are we seeing roughly the same thing happening?
Very much so, yes. Almost overwhelming number of parties contesting, a fraction, a quarter, a fifth in most places will be making it into representation. So it is many, many deposits that are actually being lost in the process. We hope the parties haven't entered into debt arrangements to fund their campaigns.
Well, Angelo, I mean, let's pick up on that point. A lot of these parties being formed sometimes by people with some form of grievance, sometimes around an individual, sometimes, of course, around communities with very real and completely legitimate grievances. Is this going to serve as a lesson, do you think, that so many of the parties, almost 3/4 of the ones that contested the national ballot, won't actually get into Parliament? Do you think it's going to serve as a warning in the future?
It hasn't served as a warning in the past, and this is, I think, something we must not forget. In every election since 1994, the majority of parties that stand get nowhere near the number of seats necessary for representation in either provinces or in the National Assembly. And let's name some of them. The Keep It Straight and Simple party is one example. Francis Kendall's Federal Party was another one. There were a series of parties related and fixated on women's issues that didn't do the necessary work among women in order to get representation in Parliament. So those parties recur, they come back, the Soccer Party, the Dacha Party, they go away, they come back in a different form. So I don't think that feature of South African politics is likely to disappear. If we think that this is a problem, and I'm not one who thinks it's a problem, the more the merrier. People who want to contest have the constitutional right to do so, as Patricia Little pointed out, and they should be given the opportunity to do so. And here we have the electorate resoundingly indicating to the majority of those people, it's been a nice try, but actually you don't offer us enough for us to take you seriously to put you in Parliament. And that should give people really cause for pause, go back, rethink what the purpose of politics is. Because it certainly isn't just self-enrichment and self-aggrandizement.
All right, we're going to go back to Joburg in just a second, but we do at some point need to talk about barriers to entry. I mean, the smaller parties, Professor, were complaining about lack of media coverage, and in fact, you know, under regulations from the Electoral Commission, there are certain regulations that broadcasters have to sort of follow around how much time they give political parties. It's not just as simple as giving everyone a fair go, the same amount of airtime. It's a bit more complicated than that. I mean, there are significant barriers to entry, aren't there?
Certainly, and I know the IC told me in an interview they are considering it, but they are still at a loss as to what kind of barriers it would be, whether it could be done by raising the deposits for participation, but there will always be a few individuals with deep pockets who can fund almost any kind of... But what are the criteria for a political party? And it's possible to go that route, but then parties can manufacture a constitution, an annual meeting, so it is a vexed question, but the IEC is certainly thinking about it.
All right, Professor Susan Boyson from Wits University, Angelo Fick. I'm afraid it's time to get out our tents. We're going to go and camp on the floor and join my colleague Busisiwe, who is in fact already there. What, Busisiwe, who are you speaking to now?
Stephen, I'm speaking to Eco Forum, the small parties here on the floor who are looking there at their numbers, and they've not done well. Some of them are saying that finances have a big role to play in them being where they are, because they couldn't reach or campaign intensely as they would have wanted. But let's talk to Eco Forum, and for those who do not know it, what is Eco Forum all about?
Eco-Forum, it's short for Economic Emancipation Forum. It is a kingdom-based building political party. It's resonated here in Johannesburg, The president is from Hammanskraal. It has a number of professionals who came together and saw a gap to say most of the people who are in parliament, they are fighting each other. And we are saying, even if there is another party that's going to be given a chance, there's still going to be certain things that are not right. So we made our researches and we saw that the problem was not parties, but the problem was systems. So we are not an oppositional party, but we are opposing systems which are in place. Your banking systems, everything, it's wrong.
It would look like you are the only one of very few people has shared the sentiments with you, looking at the numbers there.
We are one of those people, because you look at the practicality that what we have, it's not practical. You cannot have over 2,000 party agents that are deployed all over the country who are the first voters of your party, and then you have less than 2,000 voters. It's not possible. So that is why we said, let us come together and form this alliance and let IEC know that we are seeing these discrepancies and we are not happy about it.
Are you happy with the numbers you're getting?
We're not happy because these are the manufactured numbers that are giving to us, but we need the real numbers of our people who've got Eco Forum at heart, the people that promised that they're going to vote. You know, we have made efforts, we have made rallies. The number that you see on the screen board, it's not even for one rally. So we have invested so much. So they must not just play games, let them come forth and give us our numbers.
All right, Isaac Masuku, thank you so much for your time. Well, the electorate must not play games. They must come forward and actually make sure that the rallies being held tally with the numbers that are seen there on those results board. Well, Stephen, any election has the star child, and in this election it would seem like the FF Plus is the star of these elections. I'm joined by one of the leaders. A significant growth we are seeing of the FF Plus. You are featuring in almost every province in the top 4. What would you say this is? What would you attribute your phenomenal growth in these elections?
Well, I would say in the first place that the Freedom Front Plus has got a very good track record in Parliament and the legislatures and local government, so people can believe in us. We've actually convinced them that we are another alternative. And then we've had a very, very well-organized campaign. We had lots of meetings in communities. And then another important thing is I think South Africa started to vote strategically and not by default, for instance, for the ANC or the DA. They started thinking about the future, and that is a positive thing. The FF Plus has proved itself as a role player who can actually contribute towards a better South Africa.
Could the land be one of the issues that made the party grow now?
I think property ownership in general is a very, very hot topic. And yes, it definitely did contribute, amongst other things. But I think another thing that contributed is the fact that minorities feel under threat as well. More and more minorities are looking at the Freedom Front Plus as their natural representative.
Lastly, is it minorities, or do you get a sense that some who were DA supporters are now going to FF Plus with regards to your seeing your land stand?
We definitely do. Lots of traditional DA supporters find that the DA is very more populist. They've been more populist party than an idea party than they used to be. So yes, they're looking for another political home.
Thank you so much for your time. Well, certainly the FF Plus, from the numbers that we are seeing up there, is growing. It is represented in almost every province, and it is there right next to the EFF in the top 4 political parties that are there. It will be interesting, Stephen, to see when they finally announce the results and give us those final details of voter turnout as to who actually went out to vote. Is it a matter of the FF EFF Plus and other political parties gaining support, or it's a matter of the electorate supporting some political parties abstaining from this year's election? Well, that all remains to be seen when the final results are announced, when the IEC was saying there that in 7 days, whether or not they'll be able to sort out all this that is surrounding the elections, all this that is being the concerns and complaints that are being lodged by the political parties, and if these elections will be declared free and fair. Stephen.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, let's have a look at Gauteng now and the situation here, the voting districts that have actually reported in and have their votes tabulated and audited. Someone keeping a very close eye on that for us is the SABC reporter, Ntebo Mokobo. He joins me now. Ntebo, good evening to you. All right, we know it looks like the predictions seem to suggest the ANC is going to keep power in Gauteng. Is that how you're reading those numbers tonight?
Well, yes, indeed, Stephen. If you look at the number of voting districts that have been declared so far, 48% of them have been declared. You would recall that, counting is still, the counting of votes and the declaration of those votes are still trickling as we speak, slowly but surely, and 48% of them have been declared. But you would recall again that, in 2016, for instance, Gauteng, the ANC lost Gauteng by around 45%, and of course now with 48% of the voting district being declared in the province, 51%, the ANC is standing at 51% and the DA at 26%, and of course the EFF at 48, at 14. That on its own bodes well for the ANC. Looking at what happened in 2016, and that on its own formed the basis of what the DA wished for, that it wants to bring the ANC under 50% in these elections.
There's several things to look at here. Firstly, from what we can see, and I did put this to Musi Memani about an hour ago now, it looks like the Democratic Alliance could actually get a smaller percentage of the vote in Gauteng in this 2019 election than it did in 2014.
Yes, indeed. You would recall, Stephen, in 2014, some people in the ANC, some of them were not really happy about the direction that the ANC was taking. And of course, even in 2016, things got worse, in fact, when people were complaining about the e-tolls. And the ANC in Gauteng was sort of begging the national office, the Luthuli House, that let's do away with these e-tolls. But that didn't happen. And of course, some people even said that we're going to punish the ANC. And we've seen that with the outcome of those elections. And of course, if you look at now, the DA is not really doing good. And even if you look at some of the polling stations that have declared the results so far, you look at Tshwane, for instance. Tshwane, Soshanguve, Mabopane, Harankua, Mamelodi, all those voting stations or voting districts haven't been declared. And of course, if you look at Johannesburg, the city of Johannesburg, for instance, the ANC is still strong in the city of Johannesburg. If you look, for instance, at Diepsloot is one of the strongholds of the ANC. Alexandra, for instance, where at some point Mayor Herman Mashaba didn't really do well when it comes to a PR for the DA.
One of the things about the Gauteng election, of course, is that whereas the Northern Cape is probably nearly done because there are far fewer people, Gauteng is usually one of the last provinces to declare and to have all of its results in, simply because it's got such a high population density.
Yes, indeed. If you look at the number of people who have registered for election or people who are eligible, there's over around 10 million, and people who've registered for this election, 6.3 million of them. And if you look at the number that are on the screen, we still have a long way to go.
We don't know yet, of course, when they'll report. Any of the other parties, the Economic Freedom Fighters usually does pretty well in Gauteng. They're an important player here.
Yes, if you look at Ekurhuleni, for instance, they're very strong in Ekurhuleni. And if you look at some parts of the West Rand, they're very strong in the West Rand. They're very strong. If you look, for instance, Gauteng, Stephen, Gauteng, that's where most of the informal settlements are. And the EFF is very strong in those informal settlements. And I think they will really do well when it comes to penetrating those informal settlements.
And Ntebo Mokobo, thank you very much indeed. One of the SABC, part of the SABC's team here covering the situation in Gauteng. I'm going to ask if I can borrow your microphone for a moment. Thank you very much indeed. And I'm going to welcome and invite the Secretary General of the Economic Freedom Fighters now, Godrich Gadi, to come and enter our shot. Mr. Gadi, good evening to you. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening to you and to your listeners.
I'm going to keep the microphone, I'm afraid. Okay, we're going to go a little...
keeping it for the other guys. I thought are also giving it to me.
Please come further into the light if you don't mind. He was one of our reporters. It was, in fact, it's his. I've expropriated it from him.
Really?
So, yeah,
okay.
That's right. I'll compensate him later.
All right.
So, look, if we look at the situation, you're looking at the National Board, you're looking at where the EFF is. You're on track probably for just under 11%. Is that how you see it?
No. Still a long way to go, Stephen. You can attest it to that. Let us allow the IEC and the voters to speak. We are watching the board, all of us. We are not in a hurry. We are not agitated. The board shall be very clear on Saturday when the IEC announces the results.
So you are expecting significant change, or you aren't expecting significant change?
Well, we get into a race for significant change. So it can be that all of a sudden I wouldn't be speaking of a very significant performance by the EFF.
I mean, one of the things you might have been hoping for was the position of kingmaker in Gauteng. From what we can see in Gauteng, I was just talking to my colleague Ntebo about that now, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. It looks like the ANC will be able to retain it on its own.
Well, it has never been our intention and our aim and objective to be kingmaker. It is our intention to be on the race and win the race, and we're watching the space and we're looking at the numbers on the board, and we think it is still possible.
There's been various comments about the integrity of this election. You'll have seen that group of smaller parties, or much smaller than your party, I must say, making various claims, threatening action, etc., etc., etc. I know that you've raised one or two concerns. You've done it very carefully, if I may say. How closely are you watching that? You're not joining those smaller parties and calling for the election to be rerun at this stage?
Our president, on his voting day on Wednesday yesterday, actually told the world and the country that EFF shall accept the results as they are announced by the Independent Electoral Commission. We take this commission and this entity very serious. It's one of the most credible, still at least with integrity, one of the organs of the state that is not captured, and it is the least that we can protect that we have currently in South Africa. It takes a lunatic to cause a civil war in a country just because of elections. Elections come, elections go. Political parties must just package their messages to the voters. It is not about us. It is about our people, and we are not in that space of taking our people to the streets. We wish them well in the courts. I think that is the right place to go, and the courts shall make a determination.
It's been a long, hard, grueling campaign for everyone. I think you and all of the politicians here are probably looking forward to some sleep at some point, maybe later on Sunday?
Most probably so, but I don't think it will be a sleep as such. It will be a nap, because Monday will be we should be at work somewhere in union buildings, depending on the performance of your political party, and in particular the EFF. So the work starts as the elections come to an end. The work starts as the results are announced. And it was a grueling campaign. Unfortunately, it was a campaign of the EFF without a sparring partner out there. Hence, even the voter turnout does not seem to be very satisfactory compared to other times, because the other parties just did not bring in the excitement and the vroom-vroom in the whole process.
You felt the need for a bit more razzmatazz?
Well, we did put it out there. I mean, in all the 4,392 wards of South Africa, in all the 22,925 voting stations in the 9 provinces of the country, you have come across the Red Berets, you have come across the EFF, and we did our best, and what was humanly possible. We leave the rest to God and the spirits of our ancestors.
Godrich Gardie, the Secretary General of the Economic Freedom Fighters, thank you for your time, sir. I'm sure we'll speak again.
Thank you very much to you and to your viewers.
Godrich Gardie there, talking to you here on SABC tonight. All right, we'll get some more analysis of the election results. We'll speak to someone who really has studied all of these results. We'll speak to more political parties as we go through the evening here as well. And of course, we're broadcasting live from the Results Operations Centre here in Pretoria. Let's invite into our shot now Paul Berkowitz, one of our analysts who's coming through tonight. But we'll go to him in a moment. But first, of course, we'll go back to Johannesburg and my colleague Griselda Lewis.
Thank you very much, Stephen, live from The Rock in Pretoria. Let's start, of course, with some other stories making news. Small parties have been battling it out for a slice of the electoral pie, but with 48 parties, some major casualties are expected. The 3 major parties, the ANC, DA and EFF, continue to dominate the political landscape.
The leaderboard paints a worrying picture for smaller parties. COPE and the UDM among those bleeding votes.
We are worried, every party will be worried when you see the board, but we still hope that there are still other stations that are still coming.
We're not worried as yet because we believe that the counting started late, so the counting is still carrying on.
Showing dwindling support on the national and provincial ballot, analysts believe they should be worried.
I do think that for smaller parties, the reasons might be very specific for some and some may be general. COPE specifically. The long battles between the leaders, Moswale Kota and Bazima Shilowa, and the failure to define their policy and their philosophy, as well as the more recent stance they took on the land issue, which is a very emotive issue. I do think that UDM, the fact that it has failed to grow beyond other provinces, it has remained mainly the regional party in the Eastern Cape.
While some are licking their wounds, others are savoring unexpected gains. The Freedom Front Plus has doubled its showing.
Those who had moved to the DA might be finding it awkward now that DA is trying to expand its own support from the Afrikaners, from the blacks, which is beginning to crowd them out, and they wanted to go back to a party that is more forthright in defending their interests.
Also on an upward trajectory, two newcomers, Patricia de Lille's Good Party and the African Transformation Movement, were formed just months before the election. Among new players not making much of an impact, Black First Land First and the African Content Movement. Mangoba Mkunu, SABC News, Pretoria.
And there's been a recount of votes cast at Ward 4 in Huhudi near Vryburg in the northwest. Opposition parties raised the alarm about possible vote rigging. The Socialist Revolutionary Workers' Party says there were several hundred extra ballots.
It didn't add up. The math was all awry. With the alarm raised and the IEC officials alerted, police swarmed in. The number of ballots counted far exceeded the official number of ballot books reserved for this voting station.
The votes did not tally, so now we were forced to recount. So that's what's been happening. So all opposition parties, in fact, came through to say that we are not happy with what's happening. We need the IEC to facilitate the process that we should recount, because you cannot have votes that do not tally in an excess of 730 votes. Can't happen.
We are not happy totally about IEC in the manner that they have conducted these elections. Our standpoint is that they have actually brought us people who are untrained, people who are unprofessional. So therefore, these elections, according to me, if you ask me, they are not free and fair.
17 hours after the voting station closed, the votes were finally recounted. Those results have not been released. Sintle Inglihihi, SABC News, Vryburg.
Meanwhile, ANC supporters in the Eastern Cape are already celebrating victory. Early predictions based on results already in show the ANC winning the province with almost 70%. Now, the ANC has dominated this province with the birthplace of Nelson Mandela and Oliver Tambo since the dawn of democracy. Now, voting day normally has a carnival atmosphere on the West Coast, and Saldanha was no exception this election. Despite disruptive protests late last year, the DA lost some ground but managed 50% of the vote. The ANC also bled support and garnered 32%. The Dark Horses, the Freedom Front Plus, picked up 5% of the vote, and the EFF 3.5%.
Supporters from all parties partied into the night in a peaceful manner.
The West Coast, renowned for its carnival atmosphere during election time, didn't disappoint, although voter turnout was down like around the rest of the country. Both the ANC and DA supporters claimed victory and were hopeful that their vote would bring about change.
We are very grateful that the ANC won this time because DA, it was doing very bad things to us.
The people here in Metropos would like that the municipality has to change because they're still living in informal settlements.
I'm very happy because the DA won. I never had any doubt that we will win, and I'm very happy.
The ANC leadership up the West Coast was scathing about the DA and claimed that although the DA won, change was coming and was inevitable.
As the ANC, we are very happy about the turnout of our voters to at least push the DA to a margin that is even less than 50%. So it is very nice that we can continue in this manner so that our voters are really seeing what the DA has been doing for many years. That is the issue that our people are crying for, that the DA is blocking development in our poor areas but giving all its budget to areas that afford. That is the issue that is the main. There's issues of electricity that it increases them, and it is bylaws that are anti-poor.
The DA, on the other hand, were happy with the results, although they observed the gains made by the Freedom Front Plus.
Well, from the DA in the West Region, Western Cape, we're extremely proud to say that we've won 9 out of the 10 constituencies in the West Region. I'm extremely proud. Some of our traditional votes did go in the direction of the Freedom Plus. But we still managed to hold on, and actually in some cases we did increase and in some cases we did decrease, but we've done extremely well.
The people up the West Coast have voted and everyone seems to be happy with the results, but much work needs to be done. The carnival atmosphere, however, remains in place. Craig Murray, SABC News, Saldanha, up the West Coast.
And the country's 6th democratic general election saw a significant increase in the number of political parties that participated. However, most of the 48 names on the ballot paper will not be represented in the National Assembly or provincial legislatures.
Contesting an election does not come cheap. Besides running political campaigns, parties pay to register. The 78 that contested both nationally and provincially paid 200,000 rand, while it was 45,000 rand for each provincial ballot. Yet few parties will gain the required threshold for representation. Some political analysts see this as a lost vote.
More than 20 of those Molanyana parties have been voted for by a few thousands. But put together, it might go even up to 100,000. Put together, that 100,000 would be a lost vote. I know that there is what we call a residual vote that will assist in allocating seats based on proportional representation. But I have no doubt that more than 20 of them shall have lost, and the people shall have wasted their time queuing only for their votes not to count.
However, the small parties disagree. To them, it's not about getting seats, but getting their ideology heard.
I don't believe that it is a lost number or a lost vote. I think what is actually very important that we need to understand that those people who went out to go and vote for African Covenant, they went out to go and vote for a vision. So the vision is not going to die.
Not at all, because they not only voted for us to have a seat in Parliament, they voted for a principle, for what they believed in. And whenever you vote for something that you believe in, it is never lost. It's never not important to do what you believe in, and that is what our party stands for as well. So I can clearly say to you that we plan to carry on. Next election we'll be back.
Counting is still continuing, and for now their eyes are on the scoreboard, hoping to reach the required threshold. Lula Mamaja, SABC News, Results Operations Center.
Now, in other news, the State Capture Commission heard today how former Transnet CEO Brian Molefe flouted procurement processes and had a hand in a questionable surveillance contract. Transnet's Executive Manager for Governance, Peter Volming, testified that a contract in which Neotel was the preferred bidder was awarded to T-Systems.
Volming corroborated Board Chair Popo Molefe's testimony. He described how deviations from regular procurement processes were considered normal. National Treasury does allow for deviations from the open bid process, but it's only in the event of an emergency or when sourcing the services of a sole provider. Volming testified that one application for deviation cited a sole provider. It was later discovered there was another provider. Volming explained how the system was abused to favor certain companies.
Group or the corporate center can't decide we need a confinement. If it doesn't come from the end user function or the operating division, even there, it must pass the CPO, it must pass the OD-CEO, it must serve before the acquisition committee, who must say that they are satisfied with it, before it comes to group, where it gets reviewed by the CPO and various other, the group chief supply chain officer and various other bodies. And that is to ensure that confinements are not abused.
He testified that bidders like Gijima and Neotel were overlooked because of risks, and that Brian Molefe rescinded a decision to award Neotel a contract in favor of T-Systems. T-Systems did not meet Transnet's requirements.
The decision itself was taken in a procedurally unfair manner. Certain risks were identified relating to Neotel, yet Neotel is not afforded a proper opportunity to deal with those risks and to give their side of the story. And I attach a draft letter that was prepared for Neotel, where I had indicated the importance of following a procedurally fair process, asking them for their side of the story before a decision is made to disqualify them.
He also testified that the state capture project happened through a process created to override controls. The inquiry continues. Balentle Mthethwa, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Of course, we're keeping our eye on the elections. Let's find out now what's buzzing on Twitter with social media anchor Shante Yankis and social media expert Iavi Madurai, who is the MD of Black Box Theory. Ladies, what's trending now? I see there's a bit of talk about Auntie Pat.
Yeah, which has been referred to affectionately as the auntie of the nation.
Oh, the auntie of the nation. Okay, I'll leave that to social media.
Thank you. So, yeah, we've been having a look at what's been trending on social media, the new faces that we could be seeing in Parliament.
The new faces in Parliament.
But let's have a look firstly at the SA election stats that we've seen and the comparison from yesterday and the exposure that we've seen today.
So, remember yesterday, if you remember, that little blue circle in the middle had the number 7.7 million. And that was the stat that we were all freaked out about, or we were all excited about. And today, from a results perspective, that is now 1.1. Now, yesterday, the 7.7 showed people were hashtagging as they were standing in queues, talking about the voting, etc., etc. That's dropped by a seventh in terms of the results, telling us that the exposure is not as much because people are not engaged as much. So if you look on social media, it's mainly the media that is covering the results. People are talking different things.
Yeah, well, it's been a very busy week. Royal babies, royal baby names, and of course today the Bachelor is being announced. So that could possibly be one of the things. We've also been talking about voter education, which has come into play. Seeing on social media people saying, how do I know that my ballot is not spoilt or not? Do I need to have a stamp? How many ballot papers am I supposed to be getting? And these seem like simple things that people don't know, voters didn't know.
So you remember on Tuesday, I think it was Monday or Tuesday, we spoke about how effectively the political parties have utilized social media. So they have these things on their website, voter education, right? So let's look at this in terms of, so the Parliament has tweeted this out, and it shows us the leaderboard. They've missed an opportunity here to be able to explain what all of these numbers mean, because the media knows, the political parties know, we don't know. So people are asking questions about how many seats or how many votes do you need to get a seat in Parliament? What a perfect opportunity to be able to take information and data and just, you know, broadcast it, tell a story, give information out. So they've missed a couple of important opportunities to educate how many ballot papers. It's all on their websites, but they could have taken that same content and put it out in pieces over the months, reinforced it.
And I think more importantly there, what people are asking is, how do we know when one person is going to Parliament? Are we going to be seeing new people come into Parliament?
And there's new people in Parliament, Shantae. So you and I were having a look to see who the new people are, and they're making us wait. The new people are making us wait.
So some of the names that have come up is Auntie Pat, or Auntie Pat of the Nation, as she's affectionately known. We've also seen Jimmy Manyi, the leader of the ATM party. There have also been questions as to whether Hlaudi Motsoeneng could possibly be having one seat in Parliament for those that want aircon as part of his manifesto. Well, this one comes in here. Smaller parties on their way to Parliament. We can see it's the second from the bottom, and it gives us the Freedom Front Plus there is going to be getting 5 seats.
So we were talking about it before in the previous session, and it's amazing where they've come from. They had 1% in the last election, so they've come from nowhere. They've won this elections in inverted commas. 5 seats to the Freedom Front Plus, so new faces in Parliament.
New faces. Some will be coming to Parliament not for the first time, but they will be sitting in different seats. Well, that is a wrap-up of your Eye on Elections this evening from myself and Yavi. We'll continue to give you all your social media buzz, commentary, memes and the likes.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Shantae and Yavi. Standing with me here, and of course we're back at the Results Operations Centre of the Electoral Commission, and still various parties coming in, people coming in, some desks filling up more than others. The ZACP, for example, I haven't seen anyone occupying their desk at all. The EFF are here in strength. ANC people and leaders are coming through. With me here on the floor at the moment, our political analyst, Paul Berkowitz. All right, Paul, we're sort of getting to the point where the predictions become more accurate. Some people try and start to wrap things up. I suppose one of the questions, and I put this to Professor Susan Boyson a little while ago, she suggested she's probably expecting 7, 8, maybe 9 political parties actually getting representation in National Assembly. We're at the point where people like you and Professor Boyson start to argue. Are you in agreement with her? Are you seeing 8, 9, 10 maybe political parties in the National Assembly?
Short answer, no, I'm not in agreement with her, Stephen. I'm just extrapolating from the numbers we've got, and I think we're going to be closer to the historical mix. It's a more ecumenical mix that I have than she does. I'm looking at 13, 14 parties.
All right, I mean, in a way, this can change the character of the National Assembly, because it means that you have more jostling. Being the job of Speaker has got more and more difficult over the years. The more parties, probably the more difficult.
Possibly, depending on how all these little bits and pieces of the vote shake out. We've got a lot more parties competing, so that means we'll have a lot more quote-unquote wasted votes.
All right, let's take a look at the National Results Board now, and it's what you're seeing in front of you. I mean, some of the figures are just staggering, not in terms of the numbers, the huge amounts. I mean, you know, you look at a million like, 5,557,098. I have to make sure I actually get the words in the right order when I read out that number. But then you look at some of the other numbers. I mean, some of the political parties are literally just edging into the thousands. In fact, the NPA party, I don't think its leader is Advocate Shamila Batohi, but the NPA party still under 1,000. 937 votes. I mean, if you look at that and you're the leader of that party, that's going to be quite devastating.
It's got to be quite devastating. You're going to phone up your extended family and say, which of you didn't vote for me? I think, when it's that bad. But if you run the rule down, if you look at who is sitting at above 40,000 or close on 30,000, if I wanted to say the acid test, depending on turnout and wasted votes, 40,000 at this point, Stephen, I think should guarantee you at least one seat, and you might be able to squeak in with 32,000. So parties like Al Jamaa, for the first time, might make a national representation. That's quite exciting. We might see the end of the APC in the back of Themba Godi, which is a bit sad if you're a Pan-Africanist, and that's less representation. But we talk about more representation. There might be more concentration of the numbers in Parliament, by which I mean that the 3 or 4 biggest parties between them might have 370 or 375 of the 400 seats rather than 355, 360 that we've seen in years past.
It's a hideously complicated calculation that goes into the seats. No one understands it. Maybe that's deliberately the case. I don't know. What we do see, though, is that diversity generally is considered to be good. The more voices, perhaps, the better. And basically, the more constituencies would be represented in the National Assembly and be a part of the conversation.
I'd agree. But I think when we talk about rubber hitting the road, all the other cliches about where the real power is, the ANC itself will probably still have a simple majority. They're probably, at this point, guaranteed to get a minimum of 201 of the 400 seats. And between the ANC and the EFF, if you are a bit of a fearmonger, or if you're paranoid or neurotic about what might change in the constitution with 2/3, the EFF is likely to be, at this point, both a necessary and a sufficient condition for the ANC if they want to form a partnership and get through a constitutional amendment.
All right, Paul, it's time for an evening stroll, I think. Let's have a little walk around the Electoral Commission Centre here, the Results Operations Centre, and you'll be able to just see we've got various people waiting for the results coming through, and various people just here. Some have brought their families, some young children here, in fact. I'm not going to go and ask them who they would have voted for. I do hope that someone set up a Koki stand somewhere and was able to make sure that their thumbs got inked. I'm sure my children would have liked that as well. In fact, they probably do have that kind of thing. Then we have some of the various political parties here. We can see the Land Party. We can see where the NFP would be sitting. And of course, the EFF, you can hardly miss them. They're not the only political party wearing red, I must say. Let's go and see if we can maybe ask 1 or 2 people if they'll do interviews. Is there anyone from El Jamar who would be willing to speak to the SABC tonight? I'm going to ask you to please stand up and join us in the conversation, sir, if you wouldn't mind too much. And I'll start by asking you if you could give us your name and position and just explain who you are.
Yeah, my name is Hanif Hendricks. I'm the president of the Al Jamar Muslim political party.
How have you found the election process for you?
The election process has been very fair, and the IUC has been very cooperative, and we've got no complaints.
Are you expecting to get a seat in the National Assembly?
Yes, inshallah, we hope to get a seat. We've done better than the last 2 elections. This is our 3rd election. We've got 9 councillors in 5 municipalities, and we hope to get our first seat in Parliament and 1 or 2 seats in the provinces.
It's a big jump from councillor to member of the National Assembly. Have you had the conversation as to who would be your representative? Would it be yourself, sir?
Yes, I am the #1 candidate, but we are also very passionate about giving access to the youth. So our #2 candidate is a black female, 20 years old, 2nd university student, and also one of your kind. She is an anchor in a radio station.
Which radio station?
It's a Radio Al-Ansar, and it's a pity that our fellow colleagues of, in the other radio stations, TV stations, haven't promoted one of their own.
We have rules, unfortunately. If only we could. You'd never know what could happen. So in a way, I mean, there are lots of reasons why people get into politics. You say this is your 3rd election, and I've watched you campaign in the past. I've seen you here in the past. What is it that pushes you to keep campaigning in this way? What do you think you'll be able to do with your seat in the National Assembly?
We feel that the Muslims can play a bigger role in the political life of the country, instead of getting up to all sorts of mischief, and I think you know what I'm talking about. So we want to give them an opportunity to channel their grievances and issues through the parliamentary process and not underground. And we have now found that more and more Muslims are taking part in the political life of the country, but we've got a parallel process. We are a Muslim party for all communities. And we have a learner command, and here they're sitting. The learner command, they are high school students, 1st and 2nd year students. They've been very active in high schools. Our learner command is in opposition to COSAS. because they want, COSAS want to remain, wants the status quo to remain, and they want to improve the lot of high school students who don't have roofs at the schools, who don't have textbooks, and whose personal safety is affected. So some of these students are on one of our 10-party lists, and like I told you, we've got someone who is number 2 on our national list, which shows we're very serious about giving their youth access to politics, because if they leave high school, for them to get a political position in the ANC and the EFF and the DA, there are too many other people ahead of them. By the time they get a position, they're already 40 and they're no longer youth.
Mr. Hendricks, thank you very much indeed for your time. Sorry to interrupt your evening. Thank you very much indeed. All right, we'll continue with our walkabout here around the Results Operations Centre. We'll head towards the light, I think, and see what we can see as we do that. Paul Berkowitz, of course, is with me. We're expecting some of our reporter colleagues as well to join us. And Paul Berkowitz coming back into the shot. Paul, I mean, we were talking about El Jamar just a moment ago. In a way, to have one seat in the National Assembly, it provides in a strange way, a legitimizing voice. It allows a community to feel that they're part of it, and allows them from time to time to really get their issues on the national agenda.
I think 100%, Stephen, it's a feeling that you've arrived, you know. There's a big difference between being on in a municipality, I keep trying to grab them, or being in a provincial legislature. So yeah, I think they'll be seen in a different light. They'll be seen more seriously, as you said, an air of legitimacy.
All right, we'll continue with our walkabout. Let's see if we go to this side of the room. We can see the ANC. We spoke to Fikile Mbalula a few moments ago, spoke to Jesse Duarte last night. We can see various political parties being represented here. I think we can speak and see if anyone from F4 SD is available to speak to the SABC. Anyone here available to speak to the SABC very quickly? If I could ask you to come and join us in the shot, and I'll ask you, sir, for your name and position in your party.
I'm Mbahari Kakana, the president of Forum for Service Delivery.
Mr. Kakana, the Forum for Service Delivery, how have you found the election so far? Are you expecting to get a seat based on what you see on the board?
No, we are. Basically, we can't talk about seat because of the elections were not free and fair in terms of our observation. Hence, we have come together as various political parties, and we are calling for an independent audit to the results, because we are not happy about everything here.
Why did you form your party? What are you hoping to achieve?
We are hoping to represent those marginalized people, those people who are not catered by the current system. We're talking about dropouts, we're talking about kids without shoes and all that. We are more of a grassroots movement rather than political party. We focus a lot on service delivery. We focus a lot on what affects community. That's what we want to achieve as Forum for Service Delivery.
It can be very difficult to start a political party. How many members have you managed to gather?
We are sitting at more than 15,000 as Forum for Service Delivery. Remember, we've got around 35 councillors, and we are working very hard on the ground so that we push that people must fight for basic infrastructure so that they can be taken care of in terms of services.
You talk about your challenge to the Electoral Commission. Obviously, there's a lot of hoops to jump through before that. How did you find campaigning on the ground?
It was hard. Remember, the media doesn't care about small parties. The media just focus on 3 big parties. We were given slots, but those slots were not utilized. We were ignored. The media chooses who to interview. The parties that are in parliament are given a grant. We are contesting with parties that are getting a grant. We are not getting any grant. We are surviving on the handouts of the masses. So it's difficult to contest with the people who are well-resourced in terms of the IEC grant and all that.
Mr. Kakana, thank you, sir, for your time. Thank you. All sorry to interrupt you. I know that you were looking through results there. All right, we'll continue our walkabout, and we'll start to move this way, and we'll go through here and see who we can bump into and who it is that we're going to be speaking to. Various parties, of course, represented here. And we'll wander along here and see who we find and who we bump into. And in fact, it is the Christian political movement. Is there anyone are you able to do an interview for us, sir? Can I ask for your name and your position from the CPM?
I'm Dr. Sipho, the Deputy President of CPM, Christian Political Movement.
Well, I imagine that you are a group with a Christian constituency.
Yes, very well.
All right, and what is it that you're campaigning for?
Our country is in a very serious situation. We can see people burning tires around the street and everything. So we felt as Christians we need to stand up to make sure that there is a voice of the church in our parliaments of South Africa. And also we need people with integrity who can run our country for the best of our citizens.
Campaigning in South Africa is a tough business. I think you have under 3,000 votes. Are you a bit disappointed with that?
Yes, it's very tough. Simply because, first of all, small parties are not funded by our government, although we are taxpayers here in this country. So that is a disadvantage for us. We've got bigger parties that are actually having a way of being funded for the campaigns. So it's a real disadvantage for us small parties.
What are you going to do from here? Are you going to join the other parties that are contesting the results of the election, who are challenging it, or are you going to go away and come back again in three or 5 years?
We are not going to disappear. We'll continue campaigning for the local elections in the 2 years to come. And we are not planning in any way to match with other political parties.
Doctor, thank you very much indeed for your time. I really do appreciate it. We're going to continue our walk through here, and we'll wander, I think, through to the African Transformation Movement. Mzonele Mani is their head of strategy. He'll be there. I'm sure he'll have plenty to say about the challenge that is being planned. We'll see if we're able to walk towards him. And in fact, he's just seen me. We'll see if he's able to join us. Mzonele Mani, good evening to you.
Hi, Stephen. Good evening to you.
All right, we've heard a lot about your challenge, but before we get to that, and I'm sure you'll have plenty to say, if we just talk about the campaigning, you had said several times that the ATM would be the party in government, that you were to get 2 million votes, I think was the figure that you said. None of that seems to have happened from what I can see.
Well, the scoreboard here is not even halfway through, so I think you're a bit early for your conclusive remarks. So I think maybe you're just ahead of your time. You can't come at halfway mark and make the kind of statement. You know, wait for the full course, then you can ask that statement. I mean, right now, there's at least another 10 million odd votes that have not come in. So how can you make this statement? Who knows that in that 10 million, how much have I got?
So you're expecting something to change?
Indeed, it will definitely change. There's no doubt about it. It will certainly change. So that what you see here is just a sample of what has already come in. So a good 50% of it is still not even on the board.
All right, you're going to go through the legal challenge. We heard you speaking earlier. We did carry that live on the SABC. We have spoken to some of your people during the course of the last few days. You will, of course, need evidence. You'll need sworn statements, affidavits. Twitter won't be enough, I'm afraid. The courts will want more than that. Are you going to be able to provide that evidence?
Well, without a doubt, the first one is this one. Here is the thumb of somebody that has voted, but there's absolutely nothing to show for it. So therefore, this is my evidence number one, that the ink that was supplied by IEC is a defective ink, is a ink that is just promoting corruption. A lot of people that are in this situation, they voted elsewhere. So we're sitting now with bogus votes. We're sitting here with a scoreboard that is not reflecting the will of South Africa. This scoreboard here is an outcome of a manufactured process. So this is what we have a problem with.
You say all of that. Can you put any numbers to the number of people who would have voted twice? I mean, are we talking about 10 people, 1 million?
If we look now, in terms of those, imagine this is a very clandestine process, but in this clandestine process, 19 people have been arrested. That 19 has been given by IEC. In our view, that 19 actually represents the tip of the iceberg. If you look at the Section 24 forms that have been signed by those that are voting on foreign stations, it's a clearest indication that there's a lot of shenanigans that was happening. If you look at the number of spoiled ballots, I've never heard of this kind of number, that some 200,000 ballots have been spoiled. Some of those that are spoiled because there's no stamp at the back, and people that are responsible for stamping things at the back is the IEC. So the IEC has contributed in terms of undermining the credibility of this election.
Mzonele Mani, thank you for your time, the head of strategy for the African Transformation Movement. All right, we're going to start to wrap up our live broadcast here from the Results Operations Centre at The Rock, and we'll bring back our political analyst, Paul Berkowitz, and just talk to him a little bit about some of what we've seen today and how this is actually going to be working. We'll also just talk to him just for some of his concluding thoughts. He's been looking at the numbers through the day. Paul started the day by suggesting that this was a no-shocks election. For the moment, it still seems like that. In a way, though, one of the shocks, I suppose, is that people were not expecting the integrity of the results to be challenged in the way they are.
That's quite correct, Stephen. I think it took the IEC by surprise. They're on the back foot. I think they've been, in a sense, on the back foot for a while just because they've had to commit resources and time to things that weren't part of their core mandate. I'm saying the main one I'm talking about is the verification and the registration and re-registration of voters' addresses, which has taken a lot of resources over the last 3 years. So it's led to reduced voter registration presence. It's led to them having to reallocate resources. We now heard today that the zip machines and some of the other hardware are 15 years old. And questions of whether they've been fully resourced to carry out their mandate. But there was a shock for me, Stephen, the outsized performance of the Freedom Front Plus. You know, we talked about the possibility a couple of weeks ago in an article of the rise of the right, or the DA sloughing off votes on the right, and it happened. But the magnitude of it, for the party to double or even triple in size, has taken everyone by surprise.
All right, Paul, when you wake up tomorrow, you check the IEC app, you check the SABCnews.com website for the latest predictions. You're going to start with Gauteng?
I'll start nationally, and then I'll look Gauteng. It is a bit of a coin toss. It's going to be exciting. Will the ANC get 50% or less? And after that, I think I'm looking at Mpumalanga. I think that's where the ANC is going to lose the most. I want to see how far the party will fall from the 78% that they got last time.
Paul Berkowitz, thank you very much indeed, a political analyst here with me. Well, if you're on SABC2, thank you very much indeed for being with us through today. Really do appreciate your time. If you're on SABC News, the new SABC News channel 404, plenty more coverage coming your way throughout the night. And of course, go to sabcnews.com. You can download all the interviews there as well. You'll get the latest numbers and, crucially, the latest predictions. So a lot more information coming your way. Stay with us here at the SABC. Thanks very much indeed for watching. From Griselda Lewis and myself, have a very good night.
Well, thank you very much, Stephen, with political analyst there, Paul Berkowitz, just giving us some details about the projections that we're seeing so far. And I think very interesting to note as well is that the IEC will not be having any press conferences this evening. We're expecting one early tomorrow morning, and perhaps they will touch on the challenge of these small political parties, some of them who, of course, are now wanting to challenge the results that have come out so far. So that's it from us tonight. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll catch a few hours of sleep, and we'll be back again tomorrow. The weather is up next. You have a great night. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. It's that time of the night where we look at our weather conditions that we're expecting over the country for tonight and tomorrow. Mostly clear conditions over the central parts of the country, extending towards that western interior. Partly cloudy conditions along the southern coastline, extending all the way into Mpumalanga and Limpopo. We're expecting a 30% chance of morning drizzle along that escarpment of Limpopo, extending to Mpumalanga, that extreme western part of Kwazulu-Natal for tonight and tomorrow. Still expecting similar condition over the central part of the country, where it's clearing, becoming clear, extending towards that western interior for tomorrow. Morning fog patches expected along the southern coastline, so poor visibility is a possibility over those areas, and also along that escarpment of Limpopo, extending into Mpumalanga, the Free State, and also over that interior of KwaZulu-Natal. Instead of expecting those morning fog patches over that escarpment, also drizzle expected over those areas with a 30% chance of drizzle along that escarpment. So please, let's be on the lookout over those areas. Now, looking at our overnight temperatures for tonight, still experiencing some relatively cold conditions for tonight, with Appington expecting a low of 11. 7 is your minimum in Appington, with Mahikeng expecting a minimum of 10. 17 will be your low in Musina, with Pretoria seeing a low of 10. Warm temperatures expected along that coastal line, with Durban seeing a minimum of 16. The mother city experiencing some cold conditions tomorrow with a minimum of 9. Now, looking at our provinces in detail, starting off with Gauteng, we're expecting some chilly conditions for tomorrow, with partly cloudy conditions expected over the province. Pretoria peaking at 25. 24 is your minimum in Johannesburg. Morning drizzle expected over that escarpment of Limpopo, where warm conditions are expected over those areas. Moving to the interior, partly cloudy conditions over Polokwane with a maximum of 21. 25 is your maximum on Tabazimpi. Morning fog patches expected over that low field of Mpumalanga. Cooler conditions expected as we move to the interior, with Emelo peaking at 20. 21 is your maximum in Emelahleni. Still expecting some relatively partly cloudy conditions over KwaZulu-Natal, with warmer temperatures along along that coastal line, but cooler as we move towards the interior, with Ladysmith peaking at 23. Richards Bay can expect a maximum of 24. Still expecting a clear conditions over that western interior of the Eastern Cape, but partly cloudy conditions as we move towards that coastal line and also towards that eastern interior of the province. Tata peaking at 24. East London can expect a maximum of 23, with Port Elizabeth peaking at 27. Clear sky expected over the mother city, with warmer temperatures expected into the interior, but southern coastline can expect some relatively chilly conditions, with Cape Gallas peaking at 20. 22 is your maximum in Mossel Bay, with the mother city expecting a maximum 24. Clear conditions expected over Springbok with a maximum of 26. Appleton also peaking at 26, with Kuruman and Kimberley experiencing cooler temperatures with a maximum of 22 and 21 respectively. Moving into the interior over Free State, still expecting some relatively chilly conditions over the province, with Bloemfontein peaking at 18. Belgium can also expect a maximum of 18, with Sasolburg peaking at 23. And lastly, over the Northwest Province, still expecting some relatively warm temperatures over the province, with Tosca peaking at 28. Mahike can expect a maximum of 25. Partly cloudy conditions expected over Rustenburg. That's all the weather I have for you. Stay tuned to SABC.